exit to port, or however we do these intros. Should I do that again? I should probably do that again. What do you think, Grumbles?
I don't know. It sounded pretty professional to me.
Hello, everybody. Let's exit to port. That's how we usually start it, but welcome in. No matter what, it's important that we are here. And yes, indeed, my ever effervescent and two-tone friend. I don't know if nobody ever had seen your camera on Twitch, they wouldn't get that joke. Now it just sounds like an insult. Like.
Although I speak in alternating shrill and medium deep baritone, I don't know.
That or that.
Beep boop boop beep boop. Oh, it's on two-tone again. Beep boop boop. Shut up, R2.
Oh my god, my host is speaking binary. He's in the automaton.
I think we definitely nailed this intro.
Definitely. As some of you might know and might notice, the audio isn't quite the same as it has been for a while. Hopefully, we shouldn't have the same popping as we've had for a while, as we've moved on to a different way of recording. Will that involve more time with editing? Sure, probably. Do I care? No, because I'm a professional. Or something. I don't know. I'm not really, though. I don't get paid to do this. Unless you join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/exit to port, as our wonderful Maringana has done. Only $2 a month, or £2 or €2-ish. And you can help us keep this podcast going. We're not looking to make money off of it, although that would be nice if we could live off doing this. But we're simply just looking to lower the service cost of this, because we do have some hosting costs. Anyway, speaking of binary, which I mentioned, Helldivers, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Arrived hot on the scene not too long ago, and has been kicking ass left, right, and center with their choice of monetization, their choice of communication, and really showing others how live service should be done. But that is not really what we're going. Well, actually, we might be talking a bit about that today. But first and foremost, I kind of want to just jump straight into this whole how to do live service correctly, because they've nailed it, and you've tried it too now. What do you think of the game, Grumbles?
I think it's great. It lets people ably carry me through dangerous combat scenarios. I've only played a few hours here and there, but I like the way it scales. It's got all the flashes and bangs in the right place, and it's just one of those where you can sort of. I want to sort of express this carefully, but it's what I call like you can just switch your brain off and have fun with it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there's no thinking, and things like teamwork and communication are really important when you're multiplaying with people together. But it's just good old-fashioned fun. You just pick it up and you go and do things, and win, lose or draw, you've probably come out of there with a bit of a sweat on and a bit of an elevated heart rate, but the feeling that you were part of something and something happened. So yeah, it's very enjoyable like that. I played a little bit on my own just to do some very trivial, like basic stuff, just to get a feel for running around using the map and all that kind of thing. And yeah, just not much else to say other than go and get yourself a flamethrower. They're awesome.
They are also a major danger to your team when you come up towards more and bigger hordes of bugs and robots. I just want to point that out. But the whole switch off your brain, I think I know what you're throwing out there, and it's not necessarily the high tactics and strategics kind of game, but it very much is okay, we just need to let the the monkey brain take over and do things as a reaction. Like this is not 3D chess or 4D chess or whatever. Like this is simply, okay, there's a bug, I gotta shoot it. and you just gotta live off instincts and run on pure reactions. That's pretty much where it's at. Because unlike shooters like Arma or Battlefield or even Enlisted, in those, yeah, there's plenty of monkey braining going on, but there's also the, okay, shit, they brought out a tank, we gotta react to that and try to flank it, or do we have anti-tank stuff we can use? In Helldivers, it's pretty much, okay, here's another horde of machines coming at you. Do I have the ammo to fight them? Do I need to fight them? No. Okay, run away. That's where we're at. Like there's no other choice. But the live service that I mentioned is just so fantastic. And I think I mentioned it last time. They have this guy called Joel. And Joel is he's a game master. He's the one who's given us personal orders, or not personal orders, but he's the one who's giving us major orders. He's the one kind of controlling the flow of the map. So telling us to go to Hellmire or other big planets that have some nasty interference. And right now, as of speaking together here, I think Joel is planning something massive on both fronts. Because the automaton front on the Galactic West and the Terminate front on the Galactic East, they are all almost pushed fully back to the outer rim of the map. And yeah, I'm afraid, like something's, like we've recently just started seeing shriekers. Shriekers are flying bugs. We don't like those. What are the automatons gonna get? Huh? They're yeah, exactly. There's gonna be some going on.
Yeah,
some flummery. There's gonna be some.
I'm not that plugged into it, but if I was to guess, I think they're going to get sausage mincing machines, and we're going to be picked up and dropped in them. So, might be a little bit out there, but mark my words, if I'm right about that.
So you think the automatons live off of Soylent Green?
Yes.
Am I dating myself with a reference there? No, but Helldivers 2, they've released their second premium battle pass, and like nothing is hidden behind a pay gate. I love that. Like if you pick up the base game, like the only thing that is hidden behind the pay gate is the Super Citizen title and an SMG, that there's still better SMGs out there, and Stratagem Hero. Those are the only three things. And I would say if you really crave those three, that the $20 to pick up the rest of that, it's not an impossible reach. It's not, and it's not an impossible ask either. They are truly living up to what they first said about earning the right to monetize. So yeah, no, they're doing stuff right. They are. And
I got one other. Yeah. I've got one other thought that I want to throw out there for the Helldivers.
Go.
Right, and this is another one of those far out there. But when I play that, I immediately feel like that I wish Star Citizen would like. Okay, so I'll say it like this, meaning nothing changes essentially, other than the combination of the two. But I kind of wish that the Star Citizen people would be like, you know what, new stretch goal, we buy Helldivers 2 and integrate it as a PvE part of the experience in our game. Because if it would, maybe it would have to be instance where, which I know goes against kind of what they're trying to do, but imagine, I mean, I could do it in areas. Imagine if that was part of Star Citizen, because one of the things that Star Citizen is has a blessing and a curse thing of like, you get to make up entirely your own story and do whatever you want and go anywhere you want, right? But the flip side of that is there's nothing going on in a lot of it. It's just empty.
Yeah.
There's just, you know, and because they can't get the NPC AI and all that thing right, I think it would be amazing. It would blow my mind to see a situation where you go, oh, we're going to go over to this mining location over here. Somehow you get a mission and it's like it's been cut off for a while. So go and check it out, please. And you take that mission, you go over there, and suddenly you're fighting bugs or terminators and things in that world, in that universe.
AI
that would
robots
be,
and aliens, right? Yeah, no, that could work. That could work.
And then you could do that and have the intense like a session where it's like super, and then you can just go back to like shipping cargo. But imagine the spin that would give on the whole existence in Star Citizen, to say there are actually other threats out there that might even become existential threats for us humanoids if we're not careful. Yeah, it would twist it so in such a cool way, I think.
I think that if a larger game or world like Star Citizen would pick up some of these wonderful traits and tools that one Helldivers has with a good live service, and someone actually going in and tweaking and seeing, okay, there's a bit too much pressure from the bugs now. Let's do something to change around on that. Or if you get the call from like, here is a super destroyer with Helldivers in orbit, they need more hell pods, they need more munition. That's your that's suddenly your foxhole
exactly
logistics mechanic in. And it gives you a purpose without having to make it up. Like it's there, and you can choose to pick that up if you want, so that is your choice. But it's just a tiny bit of help to make that universe come alive, and that it would be cool. But I feel maybe not Star Citizen is the right place to do this. Because I just feel like some of them take themselves a bit too seriously for that. Yeah.
Well, like it wouldn't. It's never going to happen anyway. But that would be my game's pitch idea.
Yeah.
And you said exactly the thing I was thinking. So stop reading my mind. But the whole Star Citizen meets Helldivers 2. You know, again, optionally, and you can do the FPS thing if you want to, and not if you don't want to. You can be part of it, and then it meets Foxhole, so it does the whole supply chain, and there's a purpose to all of it. Because that's one of the key things that's missing, I think. But anyway, that's that little side tangent. I've had that thought buzzing around in my head the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I was like, oh, the podcast, that's the perfect place to put in. The number of times I've had to stop myself from going off on a rant about it.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. But you mentioned I should stop reading your mind. It's not my fault that we have a telepathetic link.
Oh,
yeah, that's just how simple it is. Like, it's not telepathic; it's telepathetic. It's just
telepathetic. Yeah.
It's kind of wonky sometimes, but it's there.
Yeah.
But so Helldivers has given us many of these things that a lot of gamers have been craving. First and foremost, a game that feels like it's going to stick around because the community aren't filled with dick bags that behave badly towards each other. There's no toxicity Well, there are some assholes out there. You must run meta builds and so on. Fuck you. I'll go squash bugs however I want. And for 90, I think 99% of the community is like, yeah, let's shoot things in the face. You have devs that actively communicate back that, like, with a CEO that goes, you know what? I can't sit behind my devs and look at them and stare and tell them to do their job quicker. They're doing what they can as quick as so you have a reasonable boss at the top. Like, what? And him himself saying we need to earn the right to monetize, which they're now kind of proving. They're developing. They're also not gatekeeping anything in a way that is unobtainable to anyone who wants to play it, or has the money to play it, or anyone coming in later. Like, all the battle passes would stay. Like, how have they just showed up like this out of nowhere and just dug a huge trench for themselves where they are now fighting and preparing their own kind of, this is our land, we own this now, you know? That's It's out of nowhere. And I've recently played Turmoil in regards to owning land. This is a game that came several years ago. It's not live service. It's not in need of further development. This is a very, very, very simple game. Have you tried Turmoil?
No.
Okay. I think you would genuinely enjoy Turmoil as a 2 or 3 stream session kind of thing, because it is simply it's the pioneers in the US West, and it's when they first start finding oil. So it's all about finding oil, and then you have this variable price that goes up and down, so selling at the right rate, upgrading your horse wagons and everything, and super simple mechanics. It has an online element to it where you can multiplay, and there's, I think, monthly challenges. But like the fact that I first saw this back in 2018, I think, no, even earlier. I can't remember how early this came out, but early 2010s at least. And I sat down and played it the other day. It's still up and running, still working well, and I was just, yeah, I enjoy this. This is something that I'm missing from devs these days. But I think Helldivers has nailed that. And Turmoil is definitely one of those that also, it's one of those nice games that you can just pick up and play a tiny bit. There's no pressure, or like there's no super end game, you know. It has procedural content so that no 2 playthroughs are the same. So
it's one of those that fits in the, do you remember in games for fun category?
Yeah. but it's also made in an era of games where developers were starting to just say, okay, we need more money. Let's do a pre-sale and sell this while it's still in alpha, or not even that, you know. So it's still coming out in that era, but it's a different mindset about it. So I kind of wish more people would go for that. And looking at the popularity of stuff like Rimworld, and other games that are coming out that are very much like it, I think we're seeing something good. So, with that, tell us why you like Rimworld, Grumbles.
Well, firstly, it seems to be a love and loathing sort of relationship. I have fallen in with the love with the game, and it loathes me. But apparently that's not unique. It just that's just Rimworld. So no, it is it is a game that just keeps you on your toes.
Mm-hmm.
And every time it can be the most relaxing and just rewarding in a nice, pleasant, chilled sort of progression way. I like to play it at a slow pace. It suits me better. And it's just, it really lives up to its moniker of like, it's a story game with all the mechanics and everything else just kind of thrown in there together with it. And it makes such a lovely mix because what it does is it brings you to the point where you start caring about your characters in the game, and that's super fun. I never get tired of rewatching the clip of Ivan being kidnapped. Is the perfect example of how the game is amazing and super fun and enjoyable, and actually way more sort of streamable than you might imagine at first.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's plenty of things going on that people can engage with as well, and they get invested. Viewers get invested in the characters as you go along too, and it just turns into a good time for everyone until I don't know, a rabid dragon appears and eats your cook, and you're like, oh, we're all going to starve now because no one else can cook and stuff like that. It's
Okay. Let me ask. Have you ever thought about doing the Twitch integration thing?
Not. I have thought about it. I haven't got that far yet. But it's something that I do need to look into. I don't know how deep it goes, but I would imagine. I mean, as long as it's got a balance like similar to Expeditions Rome, where people can help you or hinder you.
So the Twitch integration, I've watched Lely play with it, and you kind of need to tweak the balance yourself. She just set it up and said, okay, let's just have fun with this and go crazy. And people were able to summon hordes of boomalopes and boom rats and everything in and just so much medicine and everything. Just throw it at her with the use of challenge points. So which was fun to watch, but clearly it's kind of finding that balance. But I think there's going to be plenty of guides out there on how to find that balance too. But it added, like, on top of being able to get your name in the game, like you are already doing, you're naming these animals and these people. It adds another level of, let's say that one of your viewers sees that, oh shoot, my named person or rat or whatever is hurt. I'll spawn some medicine and say, Grumbles, this is for this, and then that goes on cooldown for a while, and suddenly there's a moment where, oh shoot, we need this for one of the people. What do we do now? So it can create some absolutely fantastic moments and give viewers a tiny input. Like, it doesn't need to be big, it doesn't need to be game breaking. So that's I would recommend looking into it even more.
Yeah, I just looked it up while you were explaining, and it works as a little voting. Well, this one works as a voting poll thing. But like, when you see items like spawn 1 good colonist, spawn 5 medicine, spawn 1 awful colonist, spawn 1 flash storm. Yeah, I can see where that could go. Yeah, no,
so
sounds,
you don't need to have all of them on. You can turn on some of them off, and so that it's just like you could simply have it so that people have the ability to spawn some medicine once an hour, even. That's how granular it is. So it's it works well, I think so. But You mentioned Ivan getting kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
There might be listeners out there that don't know the story. Regale us of how Ivan got kidnapped.
Yeah, so we're playing on a multiplayer server run by Who's Gaming now. And there's a whole bunch of players from the community, streamers and non-streamers and mods and all sorts. And you're all basically on this one big world. There's a backstory revolving around the Star Wars lore and the Outer Galactic Rim. And you run into Imperials and Galactic Empire forces and all sorts of little tribes and things, and the Rebel Alliance, of course. And they're all trying to like tease you into like leaning more on their side or helping them. And that puts you into conflict or war with the others and stuff. And I decided, well, it would be really fun if there was a space Ivan, given his ancestor or the origin story that we did in vintage story around the temporal rifts and things. Ivan or someone from Barovian line can appear anywhere and any time because of the temporal rift stuff in that origin story. So I just thought this will be fun. What could possibly go wrong? And we had him running as he was meant to be like a little Jawa with his little robots and things, but I sort of messed up the start because I wasn't paying attention. And yeah, we were just trundling along. Everything was going fine, fighting off the odd raid here and there. And on the multiplayer server, one of the things that players can do is you can pay a significant sum of silver, and you can trigger a raid event at someone else's colony. So it's like really expensive. So you don't get them that often.
Are you able to target who you raid, or is that random?
Honestly, I've not tried to run one of those yet because it's not really something that I'm too into, although I might change my mind soon if they keep happening. So I don't know how you set it up or whatever, but I'm just told that it's like pretty expensive and that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we had this group. They all come in called Open World Settlement is raiding you, and that's how you know, because Open World is the name of the mod for the server side multiplayer. And they can just turn up with, you know, the usual, whatever, like handguns, knives. And all the ones we'd had before had been like reasonably okay to deal with. But at this point, I only had two folks there, and they were both on. One of them had a bow, and then Ivan had started with some space blaster thing from Star Wars. And I was like, okay, this is fine. So we should be able to deal with this. And because, you know, I know it's a well-kept secret, but I'm not very good at video games. I accidentally because we had this sort of run and gun mod enabled, which allows you to run and still fire a gun, because in the vanilla game, you're either running or you're standing still using your weapon.
Yeah.
So to keep them out of trouble, I was trying to like run and gun. And somehow, again, it's me, I grumbled it basically, and I let them get within melee distance. And Ivan he was set up to be like a little Jawa, so more like sort of technology use and reliance on other things rather than brawn. And they just basically got within melee range of him. You then are engaged, so it's hard to withdraw and use your gun again. And they just clubbed him over the head. And at this point, I didn't know this was a thing in the game. So when I'd seen raids before, I'd seen my people knocked down and they needed urgent assistance. And if you're unlucky, they'll bleed out, or they might even be killed by a shot or a club to the back of the head or whatever. And so I was just like not expecting anything other than, oh, Ivan's going to go down. I'll get my other lady. And in fact, I can't remember her name now, but they had, it's one of the weird game generator ones.
Yeah.
They had just become lovers and it got engaged, I think, to get married. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Look at this. Ivan's going to have this wonderful love story and it's all going to have that. So I grabbed her and I got her coming across with her bow and arrow and then instead of just clubbing him and me thinking, oh, okay, I've got to deal with this guy. Hopefully he's quite badly injured. I'll be careful and learn the lesson. I'll keep the range with the bow and eventually we should be able to knock this one person out. But instead of just knocking Ivan down and then like carrying on attacking the base or whatever, they knocked him down and then picked him up over the shoulder and started walking off the mat with him. And I was like, hang on. I there's a clip, but I was like, what? What? this isn't a thing, because there's a whole thing. I just hadn't twigged that this was a thing, because there's a whole premise of like, if you want to expand your colony, you can, you know, coerce people, you can capture them, all sorts of stuff. So, but it hadn't, the penny hadn't dropped in my mind. I hadn't made the connection as usual of like, well, if I can do that to them, maybe I just didn't see this happening. So it turns out that this guy just clubbed him out over the head, picked him up, the fireman carried him, running off towards the edge. And because I built my colony, it was another little mistake I've made. I built it near one of the edges of the map because I was like, okay, I like this area. And I hadn't thought about that, meaning that if they attack from there or if they have a quick exit. So he literally just had like a 30-second fireman's carry off the side of the map. So I've got my other lady and I'm running and I'm pausing the game and I'm trying to position her and fire a bow. And obviously you don't fire a bow very often. So it's like, pew, oh, you missed. Pew, oh, you missed. Oh, they're gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just, you know, I'm doing my usual what I do with video games where I'm just screaming no, like the game's listening to me, like that has any impact on anything whatsoever, ever. But it's something I just get caught into when I get overwhelmed. I'm like, no, not this cat. And yeah, so that kind of ruined that playthrough because I was like, well, it basically says you may hear from them in the future about a ransom, but who knows when that will be. So I was left with this one other person that was like a random person that we'd taken in who was ill, and we'd nursed them back to health and that, and then they got engaged. So this poor, you know, pair split, poor man just carried off. So yeah. And I, you know, people in chat, a lot of people knew the game, and I just didn't know that was a thing. So that was yeah, that kind of explains in a nutshell, because I've had so much fun you know, learning the game and bringing the setup. There's a lot of mods, and quite a lot of them are quality of life, and a lot of them also add story and nice elements, and the mods make a huge difference. It's a great game, and it's a game, it's one of those games that just embraces modding, and it's like, yeah, we're all about this, go for it. And you can really see the love and the passion from both the developers and the modding community, because everything is just, it's just super, super fun. Jurak messaged me with one yesterday that is they're called Stoneborn, and it's basically a dwarven mod, so you can have dwarven gear and dwarven colors and stone buildings and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm adding that in, that's great. So yeah, I just you know, since then, very briefly, I've created another new colony on that same world nearby where Ivan was taken, and it's a guy called Jeff, and Jeff the Jawa is supposed to come down there with his supporting robot cast and survive, obviously, build up a colony, and then his task is to find, from Mare Bear, is to find where's Ivan, you know, and bring him back to safety, or find out at least what happened to him. So that's what we're playing through now. And
so
yeah,
is there a way for you to figure out where Ivan went? Like, can you go to the other colonies and scout them out, or like what's the thing here?
So here's the thing: is I'm pretty sure that since it was all related with my save that I was playing as Ivan, that when I reset, and the server only allows you to like save on exit and auto save once per day, so that you can't like save scum and, you know, oh, I messed that up, let's go back to an earlier save or anything like that. So you have to live with the consequences. I was really torn as to whether to carry on with the missing lover and see if I ever got Jeff back. And part of me kind of regrets that I restarted. I kind of should have stayed with it just to see if we ever got Ivan back. It would have been just such a beautiful story. So I'm sort of role playing it as like Jeff is there and hopefully he can find Ivan. I'm pretty sure that the server world doesn't think Ivan exists anymore, but I could be wrong. So because it is, you know, there's a server side database as well. So possibly someone out there has Ivan, or Ivan is somewhere. But I don't know if we would ever find him, or if the story will ever tie itself back together again, because again, they come in as a generic open world settlement thing when it's a paid raid, so you don't know which group it actually was, which is kind of cool in an RP way, because I can't be like, I know it's this gang over here that's got them, so I'm going after them.
Okay, so the raid doesn't necessarily go back to whoever paid for it.
No,
Okay.
I don't think it does, but
Interesting.
I don't know either. I mean, imagine if there's a player out there from the community that's got Ivan, and I need to have a hint at least. You need to send me some strange cargo, like a red Ushanka hat or something like that, so that I have a clue. But no, it was all hilarious. Like I said, I slightly regret because I'd messed up the setting up of the character in the first place. I was kind of like, okay, I don't mind now that I've learned a lot since beginning playing. I wouldn't mind starting again. You know, that feeling of like, okay, I think I would
Yeah.
do this and this differently and make different mistakes. And I'm having fun with the Jeff playthrough, but there's a little tinge of regret of like, I imagine if we could have ever got Ivan back, that would have been like, what did he imagine? He comes back and he's got like robot arms. Like, what happened to you? Because you can do a whole thing of like harvesting organs
Yeah.
and swapping prosthetic, parts in and stuff, and just yeah. So imagine he came back like part Ivan, part cow or something. I don't know. So
What?
yeah, I just like to imagine he's out there somewhere, and hopefully he's doing well, and hopefully we'll get to save him.
Sounds like we need a missing poster for Ivan. He's gone to some distant world
Oh no.
through a portal somewhere, and must be found. And yeah, no, Rimworld. It's good for you or something. I don't know. Might not be, but it does at least sound like it's good fun.
You have to be prepared to lose.
Yeah, I have gathered it is one of those games that teaches you to lose, not necessarily graciously, but it does teach you to lose.
Yeah. Well, they literally have a difficult. I think it's the last difficulty level. I'm on like difficulty level 2 out of 5 or something, and like the last one is literally called "Losing is Fun."
Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, we're going from one mysterious planet to another. I have not played Nightingale. I've not really looked at it because it got announced out of the blue at a point when I wasn't really looking at games, but I saw the trailers like, okay, this might be cool, and then it suddenly launched. I didn't see anything about it until suddenly the entirety of Twitch was playing it, and now it's gone. What is Nightingale?
So Nightingale is like a fantasy realm set in a sort of dystopian. The people of Earth discovered the Fey realms and beyond, and portals and magic and stuff like that. And it's a little bit one of those kind of, we got a little bit too greedy, dug a little bit too deep into the magic kind of thing, and things beyond. And there was a like a I don't want to say the word shroud because I'm going to overlap with the other game too much, but basically this veil of corruption and whatever setting forth, and these corrupted beasts that come, these sort of fiends or whatnot. And so the humanity had this set of arrangements with the more goodly Fae, although Fae are very finicky and whatnot. So they had this set of portals that would take you through to this place that was the last bastion, like the place where everyone could be safe. But unfortunately, this has all been like destroyed, this network of portals. So your job as one of the survivors is to kind of team up with people and find different realms to go through, which are sort of somewhat sort of pseudo procedurally generated. Some certain areas are kind of set and other areas are more randomized, and you've got to go through and essentially gear up. You can build up your home base and your hub, so you can do alchemy and crafting more better armor and stuff like that. And then you keep progressing until you find a way through the story and towards this settlement, where hopefully you'll be safe. And it kind of had quite a lot of hype around the trailers and everything, because it looked very this kind of weird mix of like Fae and like D&D-esque high fantasy, but also steampunky, have a shotgun and things like that. And it, graphically it was quite pleasing, and it looked like crafting, building, adventuring, cooperative team play with people. Cool, and the reality was that it was quite beautiful, but they, for whatever reason, and I know they've made quite a few adjustments in patches since. I need to go back to it at some point, but they decided on an incredibly like linear or lockdown sort of progression, both step by step through the tutorial. It's like you do the tutorial on the one hand really doesn't explain what you're doing or why very well, right? It's like, gather the thing. Okay, well, yeah, go on. Have you got the thing yet? Like, how do I get the thing? Where am I going? What am I doing? Not
Yeah,
you have to kind of like trial and error. Particularly there's these like mini dungeon areas that you've got to go to, and they unlock with the rating of your armor. So you get a general quest of like, you'll need to have this level of armor to progress. So you're like, okay, cool, I'll work towards that. But then it's like, where do I go? What do I do? How do I, make the better stuff? And you're kind of left scratching your head a little bit. And unfortunately, one of the things that really hampered the experience for me is they they locked things like the recipes for like a lot of the building things and progression. They locked to very specific combinations of cards and locations. So this really cool system of like, I want to go to a swamp, and I want the swamp to have these kind of aspects to it and traits to it, or this kind of danger level. So you put these different factors, a difficulty level, a type of biome, and another card that kind of impacts that biome and makes it, the less or more favorable to the person or a certain kind of adventure. And that's really cool. That is genuinely super cool, with all the procedurally generated and all the kind of randomizing and replayability you could get through that system. Unfortunately, they then locked like the crafting and everything behind a combination of these really weird like addendums, like in Moria where you've got the forge and then you get the bellows, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But whereas in Moria, you kind of, okay, that's probably something we can get towards soon, and we know how to make it, we know what components we need, and that kind of thing. They have that in Nightingale. It's just the list is like as long as your arm, or needs these two things of a certain quality, for example, and maybe you need quality tier 2 reeds, right? And you go to and you're like, oh, I've got to go to a swamp anyway, and I've got to fight this boss. So you set that all up and you go through. But say you've created a character on like a hard difficulty, and then it defaults to hard every time you open up the portal. When you go through that, even the things like the reeds will level as well. So the reeds will be like level 15 or something.
Okay.
But you specifically, it's not like you need level 2 or above. It's like, no, you need level 2 reads to make this implement.
Oh, snap. Okay, that sounds like they missed it.
Yeah, like I might be like, forgive me if people can correct me. It's probably better to read up and then word it more precisely. But in a nutshell, that's kind of how it functions. So like Ark, who one of the guys we were playing with, was like scratching his head and running around going, I've been to all these places. I've been there and there. I've been to 3 different swamps and all that. And then it's like, and then he suddenly just noticed. So when he went to a lower one with me, because I was further behind, was like, oh, wait, these reeds are everywhere. I was like, what's the difference? I was like, well, we came to like a medium level one because I opened the door or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it started to twig. But you don't really get informed about that anywhere. So,
oh, wow.
Like nothing, so the chance of you like getting that, obviously you can look it up online, but he'd even been looking it up because it was brand new and there wasn't a lot of information out there. But like, so there's things like that. And then the way they did the crafting was so weirdly convoluted, and you needed to unlock like the bench, unlock like say the bellows to go with the forge. So that's 2 different unlocks, right? And which you needed certain kinds of materials or whatever and then to go and buy them and this yada yada yada. And then once you had that, you didn't unlock the recipes that came with it. You then had to find or purchase somewhere or complete a quest to get a certain recipe unlocked, so that then you could use the combination of the forge, the bellows, and the recipe.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, why have you made this a trifecta of confusion and then don't explain half of it anyway? And then you get that, imagine getting those 3 things unlocked, getting that built and being like, great, I can build this Umbrella now or whatever. And then you're like, but I need level 2 reads and I can't find them anymore. I've been looking for like 5 hours.
It sounds like one of those things where someone has developed something and sat developing it for too long, where it makes sense to them, and anyone who looks at it that has already been part of the process, like, yeah, this makes sense, it works, this is how it'll go through. But they haven't taken a step back and asked someone else, how does this make sense to you? Like, play with this. Yeah. Are you able to make sense of this? What do you need to understand the further progression and so on? Like, it kind of sounds like that, honestly.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, I kind of felt a little bit better for myself, because if Ark can't work it out, and he's both smart and a full-on gamer and someone who doesn't mind looking things up and going, okay, I've tried getting this for an hour, I can't get it, I'm going to look it up, sort of thing. And if he can't work it out, and it was like after about 5 hours, like no exaggeration, he was like, holy cow, this is how you get these reads. And it's like, oh no, how would we have ever worked that out, right? So yeah, so I think they're going to be tweaking some of those things, but it's so weird because the game has such a really nice immersive vibe about it. Like, I don't really, I mean, I haven't played a lot of story games, so people will probably be like, oh, it's like this and this and this one or whatever. But for me, I haven't played many games that just have that feeling where you step into the world and you're like, oh wow, I'm actually here. This is cool. You know, I can see what's going on. I get it. I understand what the premise, and the feeling you get, and the way they, especially the head voice acting for just like the main one guy. I think there was a tiny bit of voice for a couple of other characters, but really like 1 or 2 sentences. But the main character, who for life of me is it's Puck, like Midsummer Night's Dream, whatever. Not right. The voice acting was superb. The scripting was superb. And the way it was woven together drew you in and made you feel like, holy crap, I'm in a live action Shakespeare play or something, you know, with fantasy and magic and whatnot and action. And so it's a real hit and miss thing of like, this is really amazing as an environment, and yet it's so awkward to play and progress through. You know, if you're a proper gamer or whatever, probably, but if you're just trying to be casual and just sort of ease your way through in that, it's almost like you want to live in it and walk around the environment more than actually play the game, if that makes sense. You know, it's kind of what I walked away with. So
it's starting to sound a little bit like how I got on with New World, where some of the things were a bit too granulated and convoluted, and didn't really make sense in how it tied into the rest of the world for me. So, but hey, New World seems to have done something to theirs, so maybe Nightingale will. It's gonna be.
I will tell you one thing that Nightingale has compared to New World. It has so much more character. It's got like I'd call like a soul to it. And New World was the thing that put me off New World the most. Wasn't so much of that grindy part, because it's kind of MMO and you sort of expect it.
Yeah.
But was that the thing felt kind of soulless, like who cares? Like, you'd get to the story point, you just be like, click, 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 next, come on, hurry up, let's get in the dungeon, kind of thing. And it went very much down that path. Whereas the main character that you interact with and that, and the story and the language that they used was so beautifully crafted and woven together that I mean, honestly, I guess they spent all their budget on that or something. I don't know, but that was a real letdown for me with Nightingale. It felt more like it wasn't an early access. It felt like a very polished demo.
Yeah.
But obviously you could go further than a demo, but it was like, after playing that for about sort of 3 longish sessions, I was like, okay, we'll just put this one back on the shelf and let it cook, you know?
Yeah, just let it mature. See where it ends up.
So maybe in a year or something, we come back, maybe there's an anniversary patch or something, I don't know. It wasn't as polished as Enshrouded at launch. And it was a weird thing as well, because that sequence was Enshrouded was the one everyone was sort of big hype about. Then Nightingale was in the background that I was hyped about the story and the premise of it. And let's just see whether they managed to pull that off or not. And then Palworld came in and just gazumped everything and was like, hello, we're just going to distract everyone for like a month in advance or 2 weeks in advance of. And that one, we've talked about that before, wasn't really for us sort of thing. No. But, for all the Pokemon fans out there, then it was perfect for them, I guess. So it was kind of weird. I felt like Palworld did the dirty on Enshrouded, because that was the one everyone was kind of focusing on. I mean, it's fair play, it's business, right? But that came out of nowhere. And then Nightingale came along, and I felt like Nightingale I almost feel like it was, and I don't know, this is pure just conjecture, but I was like, almost felt like, oh, quick, Enshrouded have come out and Palworld, look at those great successes. We've got to get our product out there, kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't know how long they planned that release for, but I feel like they would have benefited by saying, you know what, let's let that buzz die down a little bit and we'll come out 2 or 3 months down the line or something. Probably would have been better for them, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it is one of those things that some people, it feels just like you said, like they get pressured by other games and then release a bit too soon, or they're being put pressure on by investors to get the release on the date that was first planned. But yeah, many of the games that have done that in the past have matured properly. They've put in the work and they've become better, much better, like big quality of life stuff going on. So yeah, going to be holding an eye on Nightingale for that. Speaking of holding an eye on, there's a couple of games on the horizon coming up that we're both excited for. You've tried a demo of Startrucker, and I was watching people play that demo, and it just like it's one of those. I would call it a hidden gem for those that like not chaotic games, but games that suddenly give you a hard left turn. Because on the surface, like, it's deceptively easy on the surface. It's like, okay, here's your truck, deliver these things around in space. But then suddenly parts start breaking, and if you're not paying attention to when those parts break, suddenly you have a dashboard filled with boxes and old batteries, and you wonder why everything is floating like it is, and then you tumble into the nearest station or away from the nearest station. Isn't that right, Grumbles?
Well, that's oddly specific.
Yeah.
I don't know who you've been watching, but it sounds like nonsense to me.
You and Cringer mainly, and and let's just say there's a world of difference in the gameplay. But I still giggled more at yours.
I mean, he spent 10 years as a professional trucker, so I think driving all over America and Mexico. So I think he's got the edge in terms of knowing what's maybe happening and to take care of things. But that demo just kind of I just thought, oh, how difficult can it be? And the answer is quite difficult when you're not paying attention at all. So super fun. And just for the sake of brevity, because we're going to wait and probably we'll talk about it more when it actually comes around, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the Turmoil one and the Helldivers too. It's just fun. It's just super fun. It's simple, as you said, like on the surface, jump in the truck, press some buttons, truck's moving, off you go. And then the fun starts.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just, and it's kind of really relaxing, but another one of those of like, but just don't, I guess a bit like trucking or driving in real life. Just don't drift off. Don't let your mind, somebody like, oh, what's that bird over there? And then the next thing you know, you've hit a tree or something. So
Helldivers has a rule where it says you are allotted 2.4 seconds per mission to look at the scenery. It feels kind of like that in Startruckers too, because you gotta pay attention. You gotta pay attention to the pop-ups, to the alerts and everything. And
I think one of my favorite moments was the apart from the boxes floating, but the other one was like collision alert. And then we went past a couple of things, and I was looking around the truck with the external camera, and I was like, can't see anything. There's nothing. What are you talking about? And there was like collision alert. Yeah, I don't believe that. And then literally like a beat, and then boom, we smashed into stuff, and it was like, oh yeah, it's space, so everything's kind of dark and hard to. Because I was like, we'll just take this shortcut over there, so we don't run out of time on this mission. Stay on the road. Stay on the road, people.
I have a feeling this is what I'm like. If they don't make a super casual mode in it where you can just sit down and just deliver without there being any hazards, anything you need to repair, they're missing a trick. Because it truly is one of those. You have some funky music on the radio, and you can just kind of relax and deliver and let your mind drift off and do your thing. But much like all of these truck simulators and so on, you can also dial it up to 11 and really, really, really be on point with it, you know? So they need that casual mode too. I'm just going to say that.
I agree.
Because like it's kind of like, what's it called? Hard Space Shipbreaker, where the normal game mode is time sensitive and you got to work fast and it puts a pressure on you and mistakes will happen. You'll need to clone your body and whatnot. But they also have the untimed mode where you can take all the time in the world to fully break down any of the ships and make sure that everything goes where it should be. So it's and if they hadn't had that mode in Hard Space Shipbreaker, I probably wouldn't be playing it. So Space Trucker or Startrucker or whatever it's called. They need that casual mode too. I fully believe that is one of the big tricks that they're gonna need to have.
Great idea.
But what is the big trick Manor Lords needs?
I think it just needs to, build on what it already delivered in the demo. And I think Manor Lords is going to be, I'm worried because there's so many people like, looking at it and it's a one guy or a small, little team of things he's got contracted in and stuff now, I think. But one guy is the developer and the creator of it. And he's done amazing things, like with his goals, stretch goals and crowdfunding and whatever stuff. He's done things like paid for a small orchestral team to like make all the music. And he's not just been like, just do whatever. Like he's been like, come up with your ideas and we'll go through them. And then he's actively been a part of that and collaborated closely with them. So the soundtrack to Manor Lords alone is going to probably be worth the entrance ticket. But I'm hoping, because what we saw was like you could do a little bit of the early tier 1 and tier 2 building in the game, and it's basically a little village, colony management type thing set in a medieval period with different neighboring kind of factions and states and things. So there's a little like overlap into sort of a Total War-esque type feel, like with a bigger strategy map and you get your little armies together. You can use your peasants or mercenaries, that kind of thing. And there's also this, in addition, there was quite a novel thing where you could be the Lord and walk through your town as well in first person, or kind of third person behind the character. And that was pretty awesome. But in its heart, it's a sort of city builder, but it's very, whilst you're working with models, so like, build this house and it's this sort of shape, it does an RNG thing of like, there might be 15 of this type of house and 15 of this kind of, barn and stuff like that. So it'll do a kind of and they change through the different tiers as well. So there'll be different look and feel every single time you play the game, rather than it being, I build 3 of these houses over here this time. The road tool was great because you could literally just draw the roads wherever you wanted them to go. Because you know how I hate straight roads, bloody Romans. So you could build like all sorts of amazing curves and stuff, and then the buildings and the land would adjust. So like your farm fields next to them and stuff, it would kind of all shape nicely and things. So it was already amazing, and my only concern is that adding in the whole total war, like your little, soldiers and going out to fight in the field and all that kind of thing. Hopefully that goes just as smoothly and just doesn't become like a main focus necessarily, but just is a nice little extra aside and thing that you have to think about. You can't just progress your village and become too rich and whatnot without being able to defend yourself and things like that. So it looks like it will be amazing. It should be coming, I think it's like 27 or somewhere end of April ish, and hopefully because it's done through Hooded Horse we can get hooked up for that with the lovely people there. You're awesome, Hooded Horse.
They are
awesome.
I really should reach out to them now that I'm doing more different games. Mari recently reached out to them, got Norland through them,
yes,
which looks like an excellent game.
Yeah,
and I also see they have one called not Land of the Vikings, what is it called? The Viking something. I saw an ad on Facebook and I was like, this looks cool.
Me.
This looks
cool.
Cool.
It'll be in my inbox somewhere, but
because I saw Hooded Horse on Facebook, and they were advertising this game.
Valhalla.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah,
that's the one. And
I'm
it
looking
had
at the email about it here.
It had a little long ship
time to get
there,
to.
and it was like it looked great. So Hooded Horse, like.
Yeah, and they're like super professional, but really friendly as well. It's
they are
good bunch. So that's how to do a publishing house, in my opinion, and the way they support their developers as well. So Manor Lords is a good example of what we were talking about earlier with conversely with Nightingale. With Manor Lords, the guy's like under so much pressure because the demo was really fun, but he deliberately switched off saving so he couldn't save it and carry on and stuff. He didn't want people, because it's an interesting choice, but essentially people can then kind of be playing the game for free at that stage, and not strictly speaking a demo. So it was an interesting choice, but it was kind of a smart one the way he did it. Unfortunately, when we went to the first person Lord to actually walk around the town, it crashed. It would crash the game sometimes. So when you don't have a save, we basically replayed that demo about 3 or 4 times because we had over a couple of days. But it was that good that it was worth going back and replaying because of the houses look different, the roads look different, the terrain looks different.
Yeah,
it was great. And he's added in a day-night cycle now that doesn't have a mechanical effect, but it gives you some beautiful cinematics and things. The season changes and all that are beautifully programmed. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, and we'll just have to see how the kind of Total War-esque battle aspect of it works, and obviously dealing with your neighboring settlements and things. I think it's going to be quite not too complex in terms of your neighbor might be the one that's sitting with the hills and the mountains, so they've got the iron, and you've got great fields and farmlands and things, so you're going to have to either fight each other for those resources or come to a trade arrangement, that kind of thing. So it could be very, very promising. So I'm looking forward to it. A little bit nervous, but I like the fact that the developer was like, you know what, this is done. This is my big passion project, and it's done when it's done.
I love developers that do that and say that. They if you don't have that mentality about anything you do, I think it's like you run the danger of course ending up with saying it'll never be done. Like that is a real fear that some people need to embrace, by all means. But you also know that when that product arrives and fully releases, it is going to be rock solid, because that is what Blizzard used to do back in the day with StarCraft and Warcraft, like Warcraft 3 and Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne DLC. They were done under that mentality. And so was some of the earlier World of Warcraft DLCs or expansion packs. I think the first one they did, the Burning Crusade, was done with that. It's done when it's done. And I spent so many hours in that game because of how well put together it was. So if a developer has that mentality, it is well worth keeping an eye on them. I know it's just one guy, and it's probably super smart of him to actually do it that way, but still, that is a good mentality for a dev to have.
Yep.
So hopefully he won't feel rushed by anything and put out something that he's not happy with. I hope he sticks to that mentality.
Well, it seems like it. I mean, the demo was about this time last year as well, I think. So he's like, well, I need another year. And at the time, it was like, no, just release it now. It's great. You can't take this away from us. So definitely,
you'll gotta
there's
need
going to be
more
a
of
bit
the Manor Lords.
Yeah, exactly. Going to be a bit of addiction coming up to that. And it's going to be a very fun year, I think, for those kind of colony management things. You know, having discovered Rimworld, the clan folks had massive updates as well, which is through Hooded Horse, and is just such a fantastic and cozy game to play. And
you
and
should,
then we've got,
like, if you like those, by the way, you should look at Prison Architect and The Escapists.
Okay.
The Escapists, I think you could absolutely enjoy and have so much fun with. So yeah, you should check those out. And
I don't know that one.
and
Prison Architect. Yeah, I've got that
people at home that also love Manor World, hello, Rimworld, Manor Lords, and such games. Check out Prison Architect and Escapists. Yeah, but there are some not so nice things going on in the gaming world. But a recent re-emerging giant, because Larian Studios, they're not unfamiliar in the gaming scene for us that play role-playing games and enjoy that. They have made Divinity series, which are fabulous games. And they got tasked with making Baldur's Gate 3, which I recently learned has more cutscene footage and time than the entirety of Game of Thrones. Not just one season, the entirety of Game of Thrones. Baldur's Gate 3 has more cutscene time and in video and inter-character conversations and stuff going on than a large HBO production. And it has been a massive success. There's no denying it. It might not be your game, Grumbles. It might not be my game either. I haven't played it because I don't have it, and at this point I won't pick it up because Wizards of the Coast are the ones that own the Dungeons and Dragons IP. They went out and went full I don't have my bleep button, but insert many expletives right here. They fired so many of their staff, so many of them who were working on the creative part of Baldur's Gate and such. So Larian have turned around to their main contractor at the moment and given them the finger, because Wizards of the Coast asked for a DLC. They've asked for Baldur's Gate 4, but Larian Studios, in solidarity with the people being laid off at Wizards of the Coast, so that the bosses could have their giant bonus, they pretty much said, nope, we're not going to do anything for you guys. We're not making more games for you. We're not putting any more effort into this. So tough luck. Some people might be slightly angry at Larian for it, but I applaud them. Because when you have such a large company as Wizards of the Coast with as much money as they have, it could make or break. But Larian have made so many new people aware of the genre of role playing games that I think the next Divinity coming out from them is probably going to be fairly big. But I kind of want them to also go around and say, hey, Pathfinder, should we make a game for you guys? That would just be perfect. I don't know. Have you followed the Wizards of the Coast tragedy?
No, I haven't, but I can't speak to it because I don't know any of the details. You know, it's hard because you always get smoke and mirrors with any such circumstance, typically speaking. So, I've seen what happens inside, large companies when they shuffle the deck and whatnot and restructure. And yeah, it's a painful exercise. I'm not in any way taking any sides with anyone. I just don't know enough of the facts to know the story. But it certainly sounds like they're doing it in an old school fat cats get fatter kind of way.
Oh yeah. There's
So
so much evidence for it. One of the things that Magic the Gathering did, because they're under Wizards of the Coast now, is that they fired all their graphics artists as part of this whole layoff under WOTC, and started using AI art on their cards. And suddenly the I think it is under Hasbro. Suddenly the director of Hasbro at the same time as the director of Wizards of the Coast and what's the third company that's tied into it? Can't remember. But there's three companies that's under that one and same umbrella. At the same time that all of these several hundreds of people got laid off. Oh, would you look at that? The top brass got suddenly a bonus out of nowhere. So yeah, there's no doubt that this is a direct correlation. Layoffs turning into big bonuses for them, and then suddenly they're using way much more AI art and so on. And so yeah, it's
yeah, it's a weird one because I always feel like the art has to come first, and if the art doesn't come first, whatever that is that you're producing, then and I'm not just talking about animators and drawers and things. Art and the art form of the game, the story, the music, everything. If that isn't first and foremost always, then at some point it usually shows through in the product.
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, that's the way this quote unquote most successful capitalist system. That's just the way it works. So the fat cats getting the bonuses was almost certainly because they had quotas to meet or cost base reductions to make and profit lines to meet and all that. And they were like, well, if we cut all of these employee costs, which are, I don't know if they were direct employees or if they were subcontractors or whatever, but if we do all of that, then we meet all of these various criteria and everyone's super happy. So that is unfortunately how business works in that system, in our system. So I don't know, man. But I agree with you, with you and with the sentiment. If they suddenly turn to, that's one of the big dangers of the AI stuff, right? That's why there's such a big hoo-ha about it in other circles. And video game industry, probably ironically being a tech sort of industry, is somewhat 2 or 3 steps behind, it would seem. Or maybe, from a pure business point of view and a capitalist point of view, they're like ahead because they're like, we don't have all of those ties, so we can just do this and use the computers because it's video games. So you're watching digital art anyway. You don't care whether an AI made that or, Mr. Smith from number 11 down the street. So that's kind of why those things need to in some way be protected or regulated or whatever, but it's such a horrible slippery slope. And I guess again, I don't have the specifics of the wizards thing, but it sounds like all I can speak to is my own experiences with things like D&D and things like the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff that they used to do, and how that changed over time, and Critical Role, and how I saw that evolving and changing. And it could be wrong, but this is my subjective take and experience with it. I could feel the change from it being a passion project and an art form into it becoming a revenue stream and a bit of business.
Yeah.
And as soon as I get that feeling, my spidey senses tingle, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to back away from that one. I'm not as into it anymore. And it's so difficult because money just comes in, and it's a bit of a truism or a simple throwaway statement, but money just tends to come in, and big money, and just ruin everything. Whatever big money goes into, it ruins, because money comes with we invest all this money, you've got to quadruple that for us kind of thing.
Exactly.
And it's just, and because it's incredibly difficult, I think, under those circumstances in the system to keep your artistic integrity and work just to the art form, I think. So don't know. Hopefully there'll be a positive outcome. Like you said, they'll find other people to work with or show how it can be done. But it's a sad one for all the people being laid off, for sure, because you sort of set your life up expecting certain things, and you've worked hard, and you've used your artistic talent or whatever in this case. And I mean, you can also see a side of it like, well, they've probably got hopefully well pay up until that point, but you do that project and it's released to great success, and you think, okay, cool, now we're going to be on the next project, right?
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is super fun, let's go. And you take that energy forward with you, and when all those dreams are dashed, it obviously has that smack of greed and insincerity and unfairness. And it's one of the hardest things, and something I struggle with my whole life in a traditional job, was just trying to reconcile or always remind myself that business literally doesn't care. We talk about it and think about it like it's an entity, but it isn't. It's literally just facts and figures, or half truths and figures, or whatever you want to say. And it's one of the hardest lessons in life, and you have to constantly remind yourself, is they literally don't care about anything. And it doesn't mean that they're evil or bad. It's just that they literally don't care.
Yeah,
it's
like
not a thing.
You, as a worker, can be run over by the tram one day, and you will be replaced by next week.
Yep.
That is the cold hard truth of it. So, yeah, it's the dog eat dog world out there when it comes to business. However, in a surprising monetization turn, Blizzard Studios, having gotten rid of one of the more money-hungry people in the business, Bobby Kotick. He got fired from Blizzard not that long ago. And he is famous for always pushing the monetization teams. And we're talking two extremes. Blizzard are behind large titles. And I mean large titles. I mentioned Warcraft. I mentioned World of Warcraft, Starcraft. They have Overwatch. They have many old titles under the belt, like Lost Vikings and so on. There are many, many, many big titles throughout the years from them. A long time, they were being under the umbrella of Activision Blizzard. And as such, they were forced to do things in the way that they didn't usually do things. You know, the whole pushing of paid content. It was no longer the it's done when it's done mentality.
Right.
And their first new IP in many years was Overwatch, which released out with massive success. Where they took upon themselves the whole loot box idea, which it wasn't. It was one of the few that didn't feel. It didn't feel like it had the FOMO element. It didn't feel like it had the, oh, you must buy these. No, this was a, oh, you know what? I'll buy a couple of these and maybe I'll get something cool out of it. And they weren't priced from here to Kingdom Come either. Suddenly, Bobby Kotick enters the scene, and any new hero for Overwatch 2, we're talking a few years between here, like any new hero was suddenly behind a paid battle pass. Whereas in Overwatch 1, all heroes were available to anyone at any given time.
Right.
Blizzard have now turned around in their 10th season in Overwatch 2 and said, no, all heroes are now going to be available to everyone. They're not going to be behind a paid battle pass anymore. We're not going to push the monetization like we have over the last few years. And we're seeing the same thing in Diablo 4. Diablo, of course, also being a Blizzard IP, where these store items, like these skins that are made by Blizzard employees, that you could get for your druid or your necromancer or whatever, they suddenly go on a huge sale. They're no longer being pushed as a weekly reminder to players. So everything is suddenly calming down a whole lot after one person is gone. And I hope that this is not just a tiny glimmer of Blizzard healing, but also actually the start of that, and that they're able to continue that. I hope we're seeing that with this large of like Blizzard are a titan in the gaming industry. Let's be fair. And if they now kind of go, you know what, let's ramp it back. You know, let's calm it down again. Let's sit down and actually listen to our people that want this in the game. Let's listen to how they want things monetized. And I'm hoping that with that large of a name in the business doing it, that it's going to be a signal effect to others. That is all I can say about that. But yes, speaking of signal effects to others, hey Grumbles,
Yeah.
what's it like to be new on Twitch these days?
I mean, that's a good question.
I think it's it's going to be one of these things that we're no longer new on Twitch, but we know a lot of these hidden rules, these non-spoken things, and I thought we should just take some time out here and talk about content creation and some of the do's and don'ts for people who want to get into content creation, or either through streaming or creating videos, and some of our more important tips. I know we've spoken about this before. I know we'll speak about it again, but let's go through some of the more important ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to start us off by saying the number one rule for anyone wanting to do content creation is do not look at the numbers. Like, if you're not in a spot where you need to absolutely 100% know that you are nailing your revenue, you are reaching your goals, do not look at the numbers. And I mean, don't look at the averages. Don't look at how many followers you have. Don't look at how many likes you got on any of the posts you put up. Just keep creating content and don't worry about the numbers. Like don't worry about the numbers is probably better than don't look at them, because if you want to learn, you should look at them, but don't let them get to you.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is going to see plateauing of any sort of given number. You're going to see plateauing in the average views. You're going to see plateauing in followers. And if you worry about them, that's when you'll go, shit, I don't matter anymore. I'm not going anywhere. You'll let it get to you. Trust me, everyone has been there, and it's so hard, but it's so important to not let it worry you. However, what you should do is look at, okay, I've reached a plateau. How can I further develop from here to continue my growth? Do I need to reach a new market? Do I need to expand on an idea I now have? How do I reach new people with this? And it doesn't necessarily always have to be big things. I want to point that out. It can be small things. It can be everything from getting a slightly better microphone, or utilizing your camera in a different way. Like, we're talking minute things. So that is one of these kind of unwritten rules or tips. What's the next one, Grumbles?
Well, if I echo your sentiment, and I for me the key thing, and I know a lot about this psychologically because of my entire existence, struggle with this, but don't obsess on the numbers or any one thing. Or in fact, if you're going to obsess on something, then obsess about being aware and have and what I suppose what would lead me onto my if you want to call it rule or a bit of guidance, would be have fun. And it sounds so obvious.
Yeah.
But I see people doing it all the time, where they're not really having fun. And you can tell they're not having fun in what they're playing, or how a game is developing for them, or whatever it is that's bugging them, maybe because they're panicking about the numbers and obsessing about them and things like that, which is, it's all perfectly normal, and we all go through it to the one or the other degree. Everyone does, right? I even had a conversation with Gassy Mexican about it, for example, right? So everybody has it, because he's been like, well, how do I have on one day this number and it's on this other day double that number or whatever, So, and he's an OG. So, and definitely somebody that I think most people can look up to and say that, made it, or whatever you want to call it. So my advice is to have fun, and practice self-awareness. So be aware of your chat, be aware of what's going on. I suppose the underlying thing is, and I didn't really recognize this when I first got into it. No, that's not true. I did, but I didn't have it all mapped out and thought out at the stage when I started. But I did recognize that I was getting into the entertainment industry.
Yes.
And I think that people don't. I think a lot of people that stream, of all different, shapes and sizes and whatnot, I think a lot of people don't really understand or have an awareness that they're in the entertainment industry. They just think, well, I like playing this game, and other people like playing this game, so I'm going to play this game, and I'm just going to talk because I'm playing the game. And you could boil it down and say, that's kind of it. You don't even have to talk. Some people don't, some people maybe can't, whatever. But the point is, what is entertaining? And if you want to measure some kind of progress or success, whatever kind of words, that isn't too loaded for you, My advice is find something that's fun, but you have to combine that. You have to couple that with being aware, because you might enjoy the absolute heck out of something. It might be like the best thing since sliced bread, right? And you might find it super chill or super exciting or whatever it is, and you might feel like you're having a blast. But if you're not aware as to whether or not that is entertaining and engaging with people, and your audience is sort of stagnated, or like, numbers and that are very helpful to give you a guide, but they're not much more than a guide. They're not really the be all and end all of things, not at all. So yeah, be there to be entertaining, be there to have fun. And fun means, and make sure that that fun is including your audience, because that's two very different things, and it's easy to miss that somehow. So that would be, what are your thoughts on that, Tiger?
Definitely. Like you are there to entertain, and the main thing is that you also enjoy making the content, especially if you're not there to make the money. Like, the only time where you need to start to really seriously look into or consider sticking with content just because it is what is bringing the numbers, that's when this is paying bills, right? That's when that matters. Up until that point, no, have fun with it. It is the biggest thing. If you find yourself being angry at a game overly much, or it frustrating you to a point where you're not having fun and the only kind of entertainment value is angry man or woman or person on screen, yeah, that's not necessarily good. Some people might enjoy it, but that's not necessarily good. So yeah, it's the fun part of it that is important. Another very important thing is other content creators in the same field, they are not technically your friends. They are your direct competitors. It might sound harsh, but when talking to other content creators, if you want to learn from them, if you want to network with them, don't do it in their business hours unless they have opened up for that conversation. By this, I mean, don't go into another Twitch chat and say, oh yeah, I'm about to start streaming. Oh, I'm a streamer too. I was thinking of starting streaming this. None of that. If you want to open that conversation, do that when they're not streaming. Do it in the DMs, do it in the email, whatever. But don't do it in the middle of business hours when they are in their game and entertaining. It is such a big no-no. Unless the conversation opens up for it. Like, if I was in the middle of a conversation about content creators and I opened up the question and said, is there anyone in the audience that wants to start streaming? Let me know. Let's have a conversation about it right now. That's fine. Or, are there any other streamers in the audience? I want to hear your opinion, or let's talk a bit about this. That's an opening. That's a clear-cut opening to a conversation, and you are allowed to promote yourself. No, maybe not promote yourself, but you're allowed to then let the world know that you are a streamer. And StatsBloke actually had a wonderful analogy to it. Streaming is kind of like being a farmer's market. You are all competitors, but you also kind of rely on each other to stay in groups to create this little product placement so that some focus on a different area of the product, and finding your own place within that market is important. And if you start just kind of elbowing yourself in, that's not necessarily going to be a good approach, and you might find yourself alienated from that. So that's that's one thing that I like. I do this so many times. Like I get people in the chat that are like, "Oh yeah, I was considering streaming tonight, but then I saw you were live, so I was gonna just chill out." And this is a first time streamer, someone I've never spoken to, never seen. The first time chatter. Sorry,
First time chatter.
yeah. Sorry. And then they say that I don't even recognize the sentence. Like I don't give it a nod or anything. I don't mention it. Like you are very close to being on a no list for me then. Because that's not okay. And it's just, what are your thoughts on this before we go on to others?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the whole thing about self-promotion and that is like I really struggled with it at first. I kind of wanted to embrace it and say, you know what, come in here, shout, go for it. And I've got some streamer buddies who do that actively. They're like, come and tell us all about what you've been doing, what we're, and that kind of thing. And I sort of applaud them in one way because I think, oh, that's so cool that they're so kind of, down to earth and whatever, and sort of not seeing it in a competitive way. But then part of my brain kicks in where I'm like, but you're just going to encourage that person. They're going to go do that everywhere, and it's not going to. Some people are going to like really not appreciate it. But anyway, I used to think, who cares? Okay, I've gone through different cycles of my thinking from like everyone's a competitor and I've got to beat them all and I've got to beat all these numbers. That's a terrible way to think about it and a terrible path to go down. I like the analogy with the or the similarities or whatnot with the farmers market kind of thing.
Right.
That kind of makes sense. I'm not a big fan of seeing it as competition simply because the audience is global and it is enormous. The audience is so like people might look at it and be like, well, there's 20 people here or whatever in the room, right? And like Carnage just got 20,000, right? But think of it this way: there's 20 people who are actively deciding to be there and hang out with you, either interactively or passively lurking or whatever. But they're still taking time out of their day and their life to come be there. And those 20 people are there regardless of the 20,000 that are somewhere else. So you're not competitors in the sense of like, Co's going to steal my audience, or I need to steal some of Co's audience, or things like that. You're just, you've got to do your own thing, and you've got to you're in a, let's say, competitive marketplace, like a farmer's market type situation, but you're not direct competitors in the sense of like, oh, it's me against, Carnage or something
I want to add something to that. I'm not talking about somebody mentioning that Co is live. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all the like me being live in World of Warships and someone else coming in and saying, "Oh yeah, Overlord Boo or whatever is doing that right now too." That's the competition I'm talking about. He has his separate audience, but it is also a direct competition to my audience. That is directly where I'm in, right? These are the competitions I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a completely different market because co-streams other games. Co-streams in a different way. I'm talking about these other niches and directly inserting your content in a direct competition to someone else who is currently doing their thing. That is where the competition part of it pops in, and the important is seeing that niche of it. So going all the way to co-carnage as opposed to the few people that hang out and watch you, that's too big of a gap. But you are still competing for the same viewers, even though how big the viewership is. You are competing for the same viewers. That is, it's kind of, it's still broad, but it's also truth in it. But it's finding those viewers that fit you and holding on to them in a good way. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So I mean, I totally get that, and I've gone through all of those thoughts and stages myself as well. And where I've arrived at, and it's not necessarily, there's no wrongs and rights or anything in any of this. This is just my thought process, and where I've got to now is it's much healthier for me, even if I notice, oh, so and so's sitting there and they've got 500 people or whatever, and they're just playing exactly the same game as me, and I tell better parent jokes than they do. Why aren't there? I find that kind of thinking, and for me personally, unhealthy. So I don't like to think of it being like, and I've found myself wanting to be competitive and try to make content and adjust things. Only for a very brief period. But I was like, when I was doing like exclusively ships, and then I thought, but that's not me. I'm not having fun with that. That's not what I want to do. So goes back to my previous point about having fun and being self-aware. But where I wanted to, because at the end of the day, if you're doing your thing and you're being entertaining and you're enjoying the show and people that are there enjoying the show, regardless of the number or whatever, then that's it. Yeah, that's what you've got, and that's what you've got to be aware of, and that's what you've got to get the enjoyment from. Because if you don't get enjoyment from that and satisfaction, and it's because of, or you go down a path of competitive thinking or whatever, I think that is, some people might be spurred on by that. I guess I'm just not a very competitive person at this stage of my life. Maybe I was when I was younger, but right now I'm like, I'm just happy to be here, happy to be healthy, happy to be having a smile on my face and enjoying what I'm putting out there. And if people are reciprocating, then I'm delighted by that. And that, I don't even enjoy gaming much on my own. In fact, I had a funny day yesterday. I was in a bit of a funk, and I was like, I want to play a game and have fun, but there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to have any fun because I'm not live and I'm not sharing the experience with people. It's kind of a weird thing that I've gotten myself into, but I have so much more fun entertaining and doing what I do together with people than I do playing a game on my own. But I actually really genuinely struggle. At least twice yesterday, I just got up and walked away from my computer because I was like, I don't want to do anything. There's nothing I need at the computer. Go and read a book or something, or just have a nap. So the thing I wanted to circle on to the main point I wanted to make was about the self-awareness and the self-promotion aspect, and talking about, well, I do this when I stream, or I do that, or I just finished this. Sometimes people try and do it in a more subtle way, like, oh, I just finished such and such game, but that they're a streamer, and your audience knows that they do as well, and you're like, what you really mean is you've just been streaming this game or whatever, right? So you can read between the lines. I appreciate people maybe being a bit more subtle about it. But the thing that gets me with the self-promotion is, because in theory, I'd be like, come on in, everybody come in, throw out what you do out there. Don't spam it, but give us like a one sentence or whatever. Where are you at? What game are you playing? Where can people find you tomorrow, kind of thing. I kind of would like to be like that, but unfortunately people will take advantage of it. And where I've gotten to is, I feel like I'm there, and sort of my job and what I'm trying to enjoy doing is entertaining and engaging that audience. Not to say that other people can't come in, and I love it. I absolutely adore it when chat starts interacting with each other, when it's relevant to the content or some other content that we've been putting out, and it's got something to do with the channel and the community. What I don't like is, I don't like it when people go off on a tangent, or they try to take over the chat, or just, it's because what you're doing then is you're saying, oh, it's really cool that you're working and you're putting on this show and trying to entertain everybody and engage with them. And you probably were engaged with them and discussing and chatting with them for the last couple of hours or whatever. But here's something I want to say. It's like, now for a word from our non-sponsors.
Yeah.
It's like having an unsolicited advertisement suddenly chop in your chat and try and sort of disrupt things. And I think that's where I really draw the line with the self-promotion, because as you said, Tiger, if you invite somebody to engage in that kind of conversation, or you specifically recognize somebody and go, oh, I think you were streaming the other day, weren't you? Have you been doing that long? As you know, I'm sorry for my ignorance or whatever. Tell me a little bit about it and what your journey's like or whatever. You can do that. But if you don't do that, then really everything else regarding other content somewhere else is a detraction from the entertainment that you're trying to put on. You know, the show that you're trying to continue and host for people. And that's why I kind of draw the line on self-promotion, because you know, that it breaks the rhythm, it breaks the flow, and it's you know, and it's if nothing else, it's just confusing. I don't really fear it in the sense of like, oh, they're trying to steal all my viewers away from me or whatever. But I definitely do see it as like, okay, I'm trying to put a show on here. Maybe I'm not doing a very good job, so it might sting a little bit because I'll be like, oh, if there's a different conversation going on in the chat, it's got nothing to do with here. How did that start? You know, I always look at myself. Is it my fault? Have I been boring? Have I been quiet? Am I not pressing the right button? That kind of thing. So I guess that's kind of where my bit of the advice would go is think about it in terms of like being respectful and mindful and self-aware. Why do you want to type those words and press return? Is it because you think it will be engaging and part of the continuation of the conversation and entertaining show that's going on already? Or is it for any other reason? Because if it's any other reason than being part of what you're already engaged with in the show that's going on right now, that this person's working hard to keep going with, then you shouldn't really be posting it.
Yeah, no, that
makes sense.
That kind of goes also into how viewers should behave in a channel, or should behave. Like, there's no rules to say that a viewer should behave in a certain way, but yeah, the whole engage in the way that the channel is already alive in is important. So read the room, simply put.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that goes double for any streamers, like coming in, maybe being used to being part of the spotlight. Like, read the room, have a look, what's going on, and engage in an appropriate way. I fear that I'm way too often in the streamer mindset. So I need to be better at kind of catching myself by my neck and going, hey, hold on. I'm not the one in the lead position here. I'm here to engage in a conversation. I'm not here to engage as content. So it's yeah, I need to be better at that. That I know. But it's hard. It's hard, like, because once you're in that mentality of content creation, it's often difficult to drop it. But
yeah, I think it's just something to keep working at, though, as you said. And the self-awareness is really key.
Yeah.
Just like very, very last tacked on comment from my side. I've seen it quite a few times, and honestly, I find it, I don't know how else to describe it other than I find it sort of confusing or bemusing, where people that have sort of just started out, you know, or maybe they've been away for a bit or whatever, but I've seen it so often that it can't be a pure fluke. And it's not everyone that does this at all. So I don't want people to suddenly go off and be paranoid, but you can certainly ask yourself the question if you're listening to this and you've just started streaming or whatever. I'll come back to it. But I always, yeah, it confuses me. I see people that are sort of starting out, you know, or maybe they're on their journey and they're trying to build up or whatever, right? But they come in with this air of like confidence or almost arrogance, but we'll call it confidence. And I'm always thrown by it because I'm like, I get it, but like I might be doing well with a particular thing, a particular series, a particular content, just having a good day. Maybe I got some nice raids in from people or whatever. So I'm sitting there with like, you know, a bigger audience or whatever, and I feel so nervous and so self-conscious the whole time, thinking, I hope this is fun. I hope people are enjoying. I hope they're getting a giggle or getting some positive energy from this or whatever. And I'm not, you know, slacking or having a bad day or whatever. If I am, I hope I can still put on a good show. And I see some folks that come in sometimes, and it just it really blows my tiny mind sometimes that they're just like, oh yeah, I was doing this and this, and I was doing that, and oh, you need to go over there and do that, and I'm like, where do you get the brass tacks? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me innately lacking in sufficient sort of, I'm confidence, or I'm constantly worried and obsessed with, like, is this good enough? Am I putting on a fun show? Are people happy? So, but I find it's very confusing. It's just the makeup, and it's fun that people are different. But it never ceases to amaze me sometimes that people are like, they have this air about them in the chat, like they've done it all. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, no, you haven't. Neither have I. So I'm not being big-headed about myself. I hope it doesn't come across that way. But it's like, you're working at this, I'm working at this, we're grinding it. Just what's with the attitude of, like, I've done all of this, or it's really weird. Maybe it's just my own paranoia. Sometimes I read that in, but it's I feel like I'm quite good at being aware of myself and being aware and reading, like, how, and I'm sure I get it wrong a lot of the time as well, but I feel like I've got a reasonable take on, like, whether people are being genuinely supportive of you, or there's sort of this sarcasm, maybe there's a bit of jealousy built into it, or whatever. It's funny that you pick up on that sometimes in chats.
Yeah. But you mentioned another thing that got me thinking. If you want to get into content creation and you want to do it at least semi-seriously, not necessarily that it's going to pay the bills or it's going to be part of your daily grind or whatever, but if it's to such a point that your previous hobby and downtime of playing games is no longer fun, invest in a different hobby. Find something to have that same or a different type of outlet, because suddenly your hobby is no longer just your hobby. Like you said, with you don't want to play games unless you can tell the story, and I very much recognize that. Or not being able to play a game because it's story based or it has something that you don't want chat to miss. You need a different outlet for the brain. The brain needs to relax, it needs to have downtime, and as such, a different hobby that will allow you to just kind of release everything and relax is going to be so important. Be that puzzle games, reading a book, painting, whatever, building models, whatever it is, just find something new to apply yourself to. It's that's going to be one of the bigger ones. And I think one last reggae for the road for new content creators. It's hard. It's very hard. Because this is a hobby where you are locked to the same desk, to the same computer, to having certain amenities near you. So the toll it'll take on your body, despite people feeling like, oh yeah, this is going to be easy, you just sit down at the computer and you do these things. It's a mental exercise. It's a physical toll on your body. So do not underestimate the impact it might actually have on you. Stats talked very, very warmly about this, that it might not be a physically exerting job, but it is a physically hard job because you sit down all the time and you're not as active outwardly as you might be in other jobs. Like, because You're not getting up to go to a train and stand on the train for half an hour to get to your job. You're not traveling anywhere to get to this thing that you need. It's usually in your basement or in your office, wherever you have it. It is a bit too close. So have something that creates a bit more space for yourself too. That is that's going to be my last little tidbit there. Anything else you want to add for those two?
No, I dare not, because time-wise, we should be rolling forward.
Rolling forward, I see what you did there. Since we have no sound bites. Know your role.
There we go. We did it.
Hey. What? Wait, we missed it. That's usually at the end of that. People might not hear it, but there's like, and that's just at the end of it, where it just kind of tapers off, or it doesn't taper off. That's the problem about it. Anyway, welcome to Know Your Role, where we talk about role-playing games, usually the tabletop kind. And I'm currently, I realized something I missed in the intro, by the way. It's the reading of the time and the date.
Yeah, the intro was just perfect without it.
I don't know about that.
This will be, we could call this one the timeless episode.
Oh, that's a good one. We're keeping that. Anyway, so as of right now, when we're recording this, I'm in the middle of my charity week that I do annually. And one of the things that I've started auctioning off is doing these one-shot RPG things, where I write a little adventure for an auction winner, and we do 3 or 4 sessions on it, just to have a bit of fun. And of course, with it being charity, I need some forfeits or something fun to do to engage with people who donate. And I thought, you know what? I have a lot of role players in my community. Why not let them become NPCs or make their own NPC that I can use in this one shot? So I put that up on the wheel, and there's so far 2 of you have gotten it. It's Nightingale and Grumbles here. Both of you have rolled that, and I was like, how would that work elsewise in just a normal tabletop? Like, to include others that might not be role players, just give them basic things that you need from them, and then tell them, you just give me a few keywords just to make NPCs, like notable NPCs that can be used. I find that it helps me, because suddenly I'm incorporating something from someone else. I get to use my creativity in a different way, instead of thinking of the same the dark elf with a large panther and 2 swords every single time. You know? But how would you use that? Like how would you go about something like that?
Yeah, I quite like the concept. I guess I've done a lightweight version of that, where we have had sessions that I've DM'd in the past when I've done like a full campaign, and I ask the players when they're creating their characters to give me, the usual, like give me an ally, give me an enemy kind of thing, or someone you've had a run in with, and then think about how I might introduce those and get them to give a little bit more detail, rather than just, this is Jeff and he's my brother and he's a cook, that lives in Waterdeep or something. So yeah, I guess just extending out on that is a fun idea. But it's I think we did things like that as well. Ideas of like have the players have an influence on either some of the campaign setting elements or specifically maybe on some of the archetypal roles, not necessarily big bad evils, but just what would this person be like or something, you walk into a tavern, you look around, what do you see? What strikes your attention? Well, rather than have like a DM could set, obviously that's too simplified, but like you could set a scene and then, you think you recognize somebody over there in the corner. Could that be your cousin, Billy Bob? And then have them kind of explain it or whatever. So you can do things like that. But I do like this idea of like the way you put it to me. Just give me a few simple pointers saying I need this, 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 and this, and then just allowing someone else to come up with something, but you still retain the overall control in when and where that person comes into play in the sessions. It's a neat idea because it gives the player something else to be invested in, rather than just, I suppose the old traditional ways of doing it would be like you would have your den or your camp or whatever, and I think I gave my players like they had their own. They had made they got a lot of loot on a big dragon hunt thing that they'd done. So it was like, what do you want to spend your money on? And they're like, we should have a boat. Okay, you go down to the fishing harbor, and you see these two boats and everything. Like, what are you looking for? So they can describe certain things that they want, and then you just kind of collaboratively make that kind of stuff up or whatever. And then they had to have, they needed a captain because, and a crew. So then they had a whole thing about like designing the crew and everything for their boat. And so they had not necessarily creative reign over everything, but they had at least the ability to sort of pick things based on, how it was different things. Like they didn't want to pay much money. They had loads of money, but they wanted to spend a lot of money on the boat, but not very much money on the crew. So I was like, well, for that amount of money, you can hire these two twins who are, fresh out of school.
Yeah.
They've been to sail once or twice, but they're not very experienced, but that's in your budget. So they ended up taking them and then some stalwart old captain who would like keep an eye on them. And then they had one guy, there was two other like more experienced hands. And then they took these two like freshlings with them. And one of the more experienced ones, the two experienced ones would always be having these conversations like, we've been there, we've seen everything, we've got the t-shirt, we've been 20 years on the sea or whatnot, there's nothing that can surprise us. But one of them, it was a conversation, and one of them was basically like he couldn't really speak properly or whatever. He would just go like that, and then I'd have the other character explain what he was saying. It's like, oh, don't be like that. He probably hasn't fallen off a mast every time he's tried to climb it, like that. So
yeah,
that's where that kind of thing has led me in the past. So I've not done apart from a few like have an influence on characters or give me things like from their backstories, like what's the head of your church like or whatever, the temple that you were an acolyte in, and this kind of thing. So
one thing that I'm hoping to avoid with outsourcing NPC creation is, of course, that players suddenly ask me, like, if I have a random NPC shout out something in a crowd, and they're like, "Oh, he must be important. Let's go talk to him." It's like, no. He's a by sentence. He's not. Shoot, I'm hoping to, to avoid those so that I have NPCs ready to go that I can introduce and use as tools to further the story or create maybe antagonistic moments or just fun moments, where you could end up describing a side scene enough that that they kind of like, this is a reference to something, and then they kind of point to their nose, and then they get a bit of a pointer about in what world they're set. Let's say you describe a large man in jeans. He has a white shirt, and he seems to be chasing a child that looks very much like him, but the child is on a skateboard. Um, and in the background, you see a nuclear reactor, and it says Springfield on it. You know, and people are like, "Are we in The Simpsons?" No. And then just to give people that tiny glimpse into something. So with NPC creation like that, it's I think a lot of people underestimate how important it is for world building to have NPCs that you can interact with, that you can talk with, so that it's not just enemy encounters all the time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and having NPCs that mean something. And I already know how I'm going to use the NPC that you've given me, because it's an excellent idea and I can really play around with it. Because I can already see myself how I'm describing this NPC to the others, and they're gonna be like, "Hold on, there's some disjointed information here. What's I So I'm kind of hoping that people will bite onto that and then go, we should probably talk to this person. They seem either very out of place or important enough that this is for us." You know, it's that sort of thing.
The one thing that came to my mind when you were describing that was, and I've not done this, but I might do this in future, is I might create the most outlandish, like, this is obviously like a half giant with a pink fez and is a battle axe that glistens and is bright green. Like, make this really outlandish, like you can't miss this person in the crowd, you know. And they go up to them, and that person is like, he looks at you, shakes his head, and holds up a sign saying, "I'm a mute" or something. Okay. or whatever, or he just walks off, and then have him walk off and have the NPC that I want them to meet be standing behind that character. As he steps to one side, he reveals a halfling dressed in some tattery wizard's clothes.
Oh, why am I now imagining a half giant holding up a sign that says "No habla common"?
Yeah, there you go. See, that's what I mean. Something like that. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, excellent.
So I haven't used that trick, but I might try that in future because I definitely encouraged it, and we had a group where it was like, "What do you want to do now? Can we go to that bakery that we went and got those really nice croissants from last session? Sure, let's roll up the baker again. Okay, fine, we're going to the bakery." And it's like, as you enter the bakery, the room is 10 degrees colder than you're used to, and the baker looks absolutely petrified, and then you can roll into a ghost story or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but like I had lots of things like that, because it's like that little cartoon of the picture of the DM with their head in their hands, like frustrated, and a picture of the party going off towards some cake stand or something, and then a big sign that says "Main Quest this way," and they're going the other way towards the cake. You know that one?
Yep.
And the DM's just like, "Damn it! No matter what I do, they always go somewhere else." So that's why I had the idea with the big sort of pink fez giant or something. Because
you gotta
let's make it so obvious that there's no way they couldn't go towards that person, and then have it not be them.
Yeah, but also not make it feel like you're being railroaded.
No, exactly. Like, you chose to go to that big giant, but I got you where I needed you anyway.
Yep.
So yeah. I mean, the other thing, like talking about that bakery, that's the thing that we actually had, where they needed to go and investigate a cemetery and an old abandoned temple in a forgotten kind of square in the town, and it was like they just were like, whatever, he wants us to go to that cemetery, we're not going there. So I was like, it was like, what do you guys want to do now? Because it was a lot of like, what do you it's up to you. Where do you want to take the adventure? Because I'd have 3 or 4 different things that we could riff off of that. And they did a thing of like, well, I'm really, really hungry. Like, what do you want? Cakes. And it's like, okay, well, roll me a whatever check, you know that there's a really popular new bakery that's just opened in town, and it just happened to be on the corner of the street opposite this old temple and the cemetery. So like, and because I know that some of the characters are going to be like the ones that won't want to go in the bakery because they'll get bored or whatever. So they'll be like, I wander off into the cemetery to pray or whatever. And I actually did one. There was one thing where I had one of them walked into the old ruined temple, but they didn't realize that the front door was actually a portal into another dimension. So when they went in there, it was a lavish like temple, and there was all sorts of shenanigans going on. And it's like when the others came out of the bakery, they were like, "Wait, where's so and so?"
Yeah,
You don't see them anywhere. It's like I call out to them. There's no response.
I
And then it's like, oh, sugar, do you think they went over to the temple? And obviously, then you need experienced players who are not mixing like player and character knowledge.
Yeah.
But that was very fun because a few minutes later they were investigating, looking around, trying to be cautious, not going to rush into the temple because it's obviously a trap. And then like I just had the other character was like just turned and left after he'd got into some kind of quest acceptance from somebody within the temple. He just left the temple, and they were like, it's like, as you look up, you see such and such walk back out of the temple. And when they'd looked in it, it was just like a ruined, they'd look inside, the roof was missing and the sunlight
like,
pouring through and moss and ivy everywhere. It was quite fun because they didn't see what the other person had seen.
I love that. I've been listening to Dungeons and Daddies, and they recently had something like that, but they also have something that you've mentioned in this little bit. It's the engagement of players and the players introducing reasons why they might have failed, or introducing reasons to why something is the way it is. Not just in extravagant ways, but there being like the why was this character suddenly failing. It's not just the DM. So that's I love that, and the use of portals, the use of player engagement like that is excellent. So which is something that every role player thrives off, I feel. Speaking of thriving off, we thrive off community contributions, be that through YouTube comments, Discord comments, or questions from our patrons. Like I mentioned at the start, patreon.com/exit-to-port. If you pledge there, you will always be guaranteed to get your question or comment in one shape or another. And if it should start to grow a whole lot more than we first anticipated, then there might be some Patreon exclusives. Who knows?
Ooh.
Anyway, our first question of the day in the patron part here comes from Mari, who is our patron. She has asked us if you could voice act for a product, TV series, games, ads, whatever, what kind of character would you love to voice act, and for what contractor or developer, studio, brand, etc.? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a fun one. I have had, I'm trying to think what they were now because it's going to bug me for the rest of the day and I'm going to remember when it is irrelevant. But I've had a couple of moments where I'm like, oh man, I wish they were just like a couple of lines here that you could have with this NPC or whatever. But you know me, I tend to like jibber jabber to whatever I go up to in whatever game. So I'd love to work with developers on a project. I would say I would do it completely for free because I don't consider myself that capable in that particular direction. But I'm also open to offers. But I think it would be, I'd love to do something that would also be like charitable and in some way too. That would be awesome. But I'd love to do, the usual quirky, silly, throw a fish scale joke in there or something like that. But I'd also quite like to do some mundane. I mean, I say I would. I'm pretty sure that it's really irritating and annoying, and you have to get the quality just right, and reading the same line or word over 100 times in a row to get the right cut. And I'm sure it's not as glamorous or whatnot as it feels when you haven't done it. But I'd love to do a few like silly throwaway lines. You know, I mean, imagine going in a setting like a Red Dead and there's a character at the end of the bar that's, you know, basically Bobby or something. You know, he's a local fisherman or ex-military guy or whatever, and just doing the whole, you know, you see, that was how I lost my wallet and watch, all in that one gambling moment, because even though I knew I should have taken my winnings and skedaddled, I was very, very drunk at the time. You know, it's having something like that
Yeah.
would be, you know, that would be pretty fun. But I want to do like, I'd also be happy to do very mundane things like, oh, would you look at that? It's noon. You know, like that, when it just happens to be that character's there and it strikes noon, to make a world feel lived in, and it's something that it doesn't matter if it repeats because it's just, you know, a matter of fact or whatever, rather than like the same 3 lines of dialogue that you get from an NPC every time you go there. So, yeah, anything like that would be fun. In terms of for who, I'd love it to be something that I can sense the passion that the developer or whoever the other party has for their product, and that I also have that passion about it. That it's like, you know, okay, I get it. This is really fun. I'm really into this, and yeah, let's do it, kind of thing. So I wouldn't really single it out and say one particular category or whatever. It would just have to be something that I felt had integrity or whatever, and for my personal understanding of that word. What about you?
Nice. Well, I've been thinking about this since I saw the question. I was like, this is really tough for me to answer, because on one hand, I've always wanted to work with radio or audiobooks or something like that. I've always had that as a, oh, I really want to do that. But on the other hand, like there are some iconic voices out there for me through video games. Being like the peons from World of Warcraft. What? Something you doing? Work. You know, those sorts of lines. Or Age of Empires. Walalo. Oh yeah. You know, these things. it would be fun to have something like that, but they're not really voice lines where you get to introduce your gravitas into it, you know. But if I'm completely honest with myself, after having watched a lot of these voice actors and so on TikTok and such, I think the ones that are having the most fun, they're actually the ones reading the adult nature entertainment, because they come across some sentences and phrasings where they're like, how do you write this in full sincerity? And then they make the funny content based on that. So something like that could be fun. But if I had to make only one choice, which I don't think I can, it would have to be main character in some sort of setting, like thrall in Warcraft, like being able to be a recognizable voice for other players to interact with, or possibly a cartoon or such, or I don't know, maybe fun ads might be fun to be a voice actor for. Have you tried water? It's good for you. Drink some today. Side effects may include drowning. You know, it's that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But just something like that. I think. I don't know. It would be amazing. I would love to do voice work. I would.
I can't remember if we've ever spoken about it before, but have we spoken about the series Toast with Matt Berry? Toast of London?
No, I don't think we have.
Okay. So I think a lot of them are on YouTube or whatnot. So it was a Channel 4 program, if I remember correctly. It's what you should look that up. Toast of London.
Okay.
And he's a kind of failing middle-aged actor with a very high opinion of himself, and he ends up having to do a lot of voiceover stuff to just pay the bills and things. And he gets completely the piss taken out of him every time he goes to the voiceover place, because he's a bit of a, you know, prima donna kind of thing. He's like, I'm too good to be here. What are we reading today? And it's like, you've got to read this for, we've got Boris Johnson here, and he wants you to do a voiceover for the Underground. So he's like, mind the gap. And then they're like, that's quite good, Steve. Could you do it a little bit quicker? Mind the gap. Pretty good, Stephen. What's that? Boris Johnson, he'd like you to have, and they just have somebody with a terrible, like, Boris Johnson wig on or something, you know, and it's got, you know, you see the sound booth and whatnot in the distance. And then he's like, could you do one where it's just, you leave a longer gap in between mind the and the word gap? And he's like, and so he's looking at them like, what the heck are you on about, like that? And then he just goes like a mind the gap. And then like, to try and cut it short, he this goes on for a little bit longer gap like that. So then he just does a mind that, and then he gets up, puts his headphones down, and leaves the studio. And they're all looking at each other like, huh?
It reminds me of the trailer for the movie The Comedian, based on Jerry Seinfeld's life, where in the trailer you're watching the movie voiceover guy, you know, that voice, and they're like, all right, what do you need from me today? This is a movie called The Comedian. One man, no, one man, one person, one world, no, one world, calamity, no calamity, and just keeps getting these readbacks that no, none of this, just read the script. One world, one man, and he goes on that rant. It's like, no.
Yeah,
and it's it sounds something like that. I'll look it up. Toasts of London. Okay, I will. Excellent. And speaking of excellent questions, Bluetinum picked up on something I said on Twitch the other day. He says, I believe you both said TC has been an inspiration for how you wanted your streams to be. Any other streamers you have who have inspired you over the years? And like the inspirations from content creation for me is big. It starts with YouTube creation through Jacksepticeye. His work morals, his work ethic when starting out, and working hard, as in putting out 2 videos a day for I think 3 or 4 years straight before giving himself a break, and really building up on that and doing well and following up, but having the attitude of, I will not do any sort of sponsored content unless I enjoy it, which is also something that Jingles has said, which I truly do enjoy and love that attitude from people. And just that intensity of positive energy mixed in with the ability to talk about real stuff, about stuff that's going on, and potentially causing the content to vary. You know, you might see a drop in energy because this is going on in my life. You know, that sort of talk is something that Jacksepticeye has done. But I then started up on Twitch, and World of Warship's becoming one of my main games very quickly. There were some content creators out there where their shtick was to be angry at people and on their team, and not understand why people did the stuff they did, and that was the main commentary, and almost rage baiting. I won't mention any names because it's not pertinent to the story. But for so long, this was kind of how I let the game get to me. I let the game annoy me and make me angry. And then one day, I think it was after I had been playing World of Warships together with Shoggy and I think possibly Grumpy, actually. Like, this was very early on. Because he had raided me, and then we said, you know what, let's go find someone else to raid. And we raided over to TC, and there was this super chilled out guy that didn't care if he got sunk, giggled at things happening, was just not worrying at all about what anyone else was doing in the game, and just laughing off everything, but not in a toxic positivity kind of way, but just, yeah, like, it doesn't faze me, it doesn't have an effect on me. It's a game, it's pixels, it's virtual, and it has no real life impact on me, so I shouldn't allow it to have that power. And I remember having the conversation with Grumpy that I like this style. I want to be like that. I want to do stuff like TC does it. So going over to more having just lo-fi beats in the background and chilling out, and then turning content that way, I quickly realized that this is so much better. It's so much more entertaining, so much more fun, because suddenly, instead of getting angry at blowing up every single time, it's like, oh, okay, well, shoot, well, we'll go blow up somewhere else next time. and you mentioned Gassy Mexican. Gassy Mexican is also one of my inspirations on Twitch. His voice work and his attitude to things, his want to create his own sounds, his own way of being, and the humor and the way of commentary was just spot on for me. So yeah, those are main inspirations. There are others out there that have also inspired me to doing things different ways, and I guess in one way there are a couple of everyday inspirations out there. One of them is Stats Bloke, who continuously works on his ranked game, where he tries to get all the ships to at least 50% win rate with at least 10 games played on all of them. And then there's you, Grumbles.
What?
Yes, your ability to find the good entertainment value in a game, and knowing how to bring your audiences with you to any new game you bring. So it's not the game, it's the entertainment value in what you do. That is also a major inspiration. And I'm trying to find that in myself, but I'm awe-inspired by your ability to do that. And it is something that I think very few people are able to do. So they're few and far between. And I think I can put you on the same line as Hello, It's Colo. She has that. Co Carnage has it. because he also brings the same kind of energy and the same audience through to different games. No matter what he plays, which is kind of the thing. Like, no matter what you play, you seem to bring your audience with you, and I'm just amazed at that. And there are a few out there that do that, but you and Colo definitely do that. And she's, of course, also an inspiration, but yeah. And that's me ranting and raving for too long. So yeah. There you go. How about you?
That'll learn you. Bring me into a conversation and things are off the rails. Well, firstly, quite humbled by your kind words. And yeah, I don't quite know how it happens. It's something I was conscious of. It goes back to what I was saying before with advice for people starting out or coming back, is you got to have fun and you got to be aware of whether your fun is translating or not. Because if it's just fun for you only, there's no point in that either. So I'm just lucky that I've got an audience who are very gracious and forgiving of mistakes, or that get a lot of joy out of mistakes, I suppose. Yeah. I agree with you also on Colo being very inspirational because both dealing with adversity and just the ups and downs and being very open and honest, and presenting their integrity as well on things, as well as being an incredibly capable voice actor and role player. Because that's how I first ran into Colo, was on Table Story stuff, where she was doing voiceover stuff for some NPCs as well as role playing in the one or the other session that they were hosting. And I was so very impressed with the humor and the sort of keen mind that was sort of behind it, clearly. And then you get to know, okay, and actually dealing with lots of stuff and just being a good person through it all, and also having to put up with a lot of stuff as well from people. So kudos to her. And yeah, in terms of like when I got into a similar sort of path, because I came in via the warships game at the early days where I didn't fully understand, or I didn't know how to act upon the vague recognition that I had that it was entertainment and not about playing this video game that I like playing. But you know, some of my original, I would almost say triggers more than inspiration, was indeed I was quite new to Twitch, and I really didn't know much about the space and streaming. I knew VODs from YouTube, but not really streaming and live content wasn't really something that I'd had a lot of time for. In fact, the only thing I had to do with streaming was my old traditional job, where we would do streaming of like big business conferences and stuff like that. So that was like all I'd had to do with any of that kind of stuff, and I wasn't really on the technical sharp end of it, more on the consumer end of it, and helping make sure the services ran well and things, and people understood what button to press. So yeah, it was KVC was a big one for me. Bless him, because he just showed that you can play our lovely ship game similar to TC and just hang out with some friends in a voice call, chatting about it, trying to help each other a bit, but not really giving two hoots whether they win, lose, or draw. You know, trying, but just being like, oh, well, that didn't work out very well. It's like, oh, I thought I could go through the middle in my South Carolina or something, and it turns out it's quite slow and cumbersome, and it didn't work very well. So you know, rush the middle kind of thing. So and it was just that ability to not have the game be the focal point, but it be about the commentary and about it just being good humored and positive. So that was one of the things, because one of the sort of other triggers for me at the beginning was as you stated, once I was slowly getting introduced to Twitch and seeing all these things, I was like, oh, I love playing this World of Warships game, maybe that's on there. Start looking that up, and you follow the numbers, and it was like, boy, there's a lot of people who are really angry here, like you said, like the rage bait kind of thing. And wow, that good, you know, good for them. And some of them were like very good players, clearly. And it was like, wow, you're so good. why are you so mean to people all the time, or why are you so negative? But because that sells in some cases, and I was like, well, as long as they can separate it in their mind from, so that it's not toxic for them, I suppose, then that's just one of those things, fair enough. Because I'm a big believer in freedom of expression and that. So good luck to them. But I realized that that was not what I was like. I don't want to hang out here. This is a miserable experience, and you're making me feel angry about something that I actually quite enjoy doing, and relaxing with. So and luckily that drove me to, and maybe mixture of my workaholic life and strange hours and things, but I just stumbled upon Kevy, and then over time a few others, yourself, Grumpy, TC, as you stated before as well. What a lovely happenstance to run into TC, a genuine gentleman giant amongst certainly ship streamers. And and beyond that, over time, I've just taken heed of a lot of advice and guidance from very professional creators all across the space, but also recognizing that there may be things that they do or that's part of their journey that don't interest me, or that I don't have the talent or the time for, or whatever, the passion about. So plenty of things that have inspired me in a creative sense, but I've also found it important. You sort of evolve a little bit over time, but I was very aware that sometimes the dreaded influencer word creeps in, and you're like, you don't want to start copycatting other people, or thinking, oh, just because so and so does this doesn't mean that's going to be funny when you do it or whatever, right? So you try a few little things out here and there, but you're like, okay, I'm not being me, and think it's very important to be yourself as well and express yourself, and stay integral to that too over time. So and then others along the way, I've had an absolute blast. It's funny because I've usually ended up not knowing these creators per se, but running into them either accidentally or through a specific product, or just because they're a friend of a friend or someone else knows them, So, the late shift folk, I didn't know, I wouldn't know what that was or anything, but then we just bumped into Eco, and I think something just before that as well. And I was like, oh, these guys are pretty funny. Oh, and they just play games all the time together, and they have this good camaraderie and this good chemistry and whatnot, and four very distinct different characters, but they have a good way of collaborating and making it fun, and the most fun is when one of them fails, usually results in like something bad happening to one or more of the others, and they make that humorous. So but the funny thing was I usually ended up getting to interact with them like in a game, like role playing with people, rather than getting to know them through their channels and everything. And it's only afterwards you look them up and you're like, holy cow.
Yep.
Oh, right. So that's that guy. Okay. And then like remembering that doesn't make any difference. I'm kind of lucky that I had the other interactions first, rather than being like, oh, there's this really big streamer, now I'm super nervous when I role play with them or something like that. Like generally doesn't happen, but it's the things that would make me nervous would be like knowing, okay, this person is just phenomenally good at a role player, or this is their thing, they know this thing inside and out kind of thing. So wanting to just kind of like fit in and just not mess it up for anybody, but you get over that pretty quickly as well. So yeah, a bunch of people that are just, I'm always interested in comedy and people being lighthearted, and just anybody that can bring positive energy and smiles, because I need them, and I'm aware that pretty much everyone else needs them to one degree or another at any point in life. So that's kind of my mission and what I try to do. So I'm looking for people that do that. But I now that's the end of my rant, I guess, or my ramblings. Just laughter is the best medicine, I find, and I just carry that with me in everything I try to do, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's the 200th time you've heard the fish joke in a week. Sorry, not sorry.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
Because
I don't know. It's something about the way Trammer tells it, where it's just
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's so good. It's so because it's so genuine. It's so from the heart, and I think that
right?
really comes across the mic, as it were.
It's impressive how they do it. It is.
I'm quite proud of the fact that Winter's probably made 3 or 4 at least clips of me saying that joke in different games, different settings, and then they all get sent to Trammer. Because that makes me happy because I know I'm making like at least 2 other people smile.
Oh, it's good. It's good. Speaking of smiles, we have come to the end of the road and our usual segment called Something to Smile About, where we both bring something to the table that has made us smile since last time. And I'm gonna start with mine today, where on the journey down here to Germany, I get super stressed out when I travel. Like I get overstimulated by sounds, smells, sights. Like there's so much going on. And Frankfurt Airport, there's so much going on. And already having traveled for many hours by that time, I'm drained of energy, and I land and I'm like, okay, I gotta find my gate, I gotta find food, I just gotta find something. And the first thing that happened was I found a little kiosk. Like I was looking for masks the entire way from northern Norway, because the airport back home was chock full because of a conference has just ended and a NATO exercise had just ended, and everybody was going the same way as me.
Oh.
And I was like, it's a Wednesday. It should not be this full. What in the world is going on? But so I was super stressed out about getting COVID or something again. Thankfully, I didn't. But I was looking for masks the entire way from northern Norway all the way down to Frankfurt. But I couldn't find any. So I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to stick to places in the airport where there's not a lot of people. And I was standing outside a kiosk looking for some food, like a little fruit cup, some sandwiches, Coca-Cola Zero, maybe a tiny box of Pringles. Which is exactly
not
what.
Sponsored.
Not sponsored. Very important. Please sponsor us, Coke, by the way. I just would point that out. But no, I found a few of those things. I went into this store, and the lady asked in German if I needed a bag. I understood what she said, but my instant reply was, "Oh, tut mir leid, ich spreche nicht Deutsch." And she was like, "Oh, would you like a bag?" And I was like, yes, please, thank you. And then she was like, but you do speak German. And I was like, well, yes, a tiny bit. She was like, do you perhaps need a quiet place to sit down? Like, yeah, yes, please. And then she pointed me to a direction where very few people were sitting, and it was quiet, and there was not many people passing by. So I actually got to sit down properly and just have a bit of silence as I was listening to a podcast, and just enjoy my food and just let my shoulders down. That was one smile. And the next smile was on the flight from Frankfurt to Nürnberg, where the flight attendant that was doing the announcements and everything was a bit sassy, talking a bit about, you know, laying the loop around your luscious hips or whatever. Like, it's just something like just using language that made you go, hold on, did he just say this? And suddenly you're kind of catching the attention, and you see that all the flight attendants are smiling so broadly because of how he is. And in the middle of his announcement, the pilots turned on something that made the electricals blink for a second. And so the microphone also cut out for a second, and then you kind of hear him go, "Ugh, these lights, they're French. I'm so sorry."
Wow.
Yeah, because it was an Airbus, so it's a French plane.
Nice.
And of course, being in Germany, there's a lot of Germans that were just kind of giggling at it, and it was just that tiny moment just brought such a big smile to me, and just allowed me to see that, okay, there are humans all around me. They're not robots. They're not always gonna be in their own little bubble, or not caring about others. There is genuine kindness in some people out there, and that made me smile.
That's awesome.
So yeah, service workers to see you, and sassy flight attendants. That's mine. How about you?
I really appreciate as well that service worker was so kind and recognized that you needed some quiet time. That's very good of them to help you with that. So mine is a short.
I'm just now catching on to what it is. Oh, okay. Yeah,
you
go
only
on.
just wow.
Yeah,
okay.
it just dawned on me. Okay, go on.
Do you need somewhere quiet to sit down for a minute? You feeling a bit?
No.
Want to listen to another podcast?
Go on.
Okay. So yeah. So on Sunday, I was I had already decided that I was going to store up most of my pledge funds for this year so far, and donate to your cause, because it's so important to me to see how, you know, you present your integrity, you're open about your story and the circumstance, and you know, it's a belief, a cause that we can believe in and know that we're making a difference to, because, and it has this kind of tangible emotional aspect to it that don't get me wrong, every cause is in some level worthy and in some level doing something, and it's but it's so hard to feel that direct connection sometimes, and I think that's why a lot of the causes can struggle, especially in the sort of tech and the streaming space and so forth. But you know, so I feel like it's very important and that we do what we can to raise awareness and help. And you know, funds is great, but it's great just to raise awareness and be there. So anyway, I was kind of umming and ahhing, because I was like, well, you know, we played and streamed together, and I was like, I think you said you were going to finish up soon and that. So I was like, well, should I raid over? I don't want to overload you. So unbeknownst of this other story, but I was like, okay, I'm you know, I'm just conscious of this and trying to just be there and be supportive and everything. And I know sometimes that things like that can be can just throw you off. So I was like, okay, well, you know, we'll go somewhere else. We'll go and support somebody. He's going to finish up in a minute anyway, and he'll be back later on. So we'll go and hang out. And then I kind of watched along for a little bit, and I thought about how we'd had so much fun in the call and playing the game together. And I thought, okay, I think this might be a good moment, because you know, I didn't want to do something like that could be disruptive in like a heartfelt and positive way, but nonetheless might throw you off if you weren't like in a good headspace or whatever. So I was like, okay, this will probably work. So I put my donation together and whatnot via the Splice site, and we did that last year as well. So I know already the sort of deal, had my account there and everything, and I posted that through, and then it was just very heartwarming, and I know what it means, and I know how genuine it is, and I know the feels that come through also for the audience and the people chatting and everything. But I had the watery eyes, and I'm just proud and humbled to be able to offer this support via the pledge and what we do here, and I was just so happy, because I've been worrying genuinely of like, is this too much? Is this going to be too disruptive and whatever? And the fact that it went well, and your reaction and everything, I was like, okay, this worked out in a good way, best way possible. And then to get to the sign to smile about, so I was feeling all happy and a bit sort of teary-eyed and whatnot. And we were chatting with chat, and there was other donations coming in and stuff. Everything was positive, and you were trying to work out what to do with all your extra wheel rolls and all these kind of things. And then suddenly there was just a buzz at my door, totally unexpected. And this is like within like probably like 3 minutes after.
Yeah, minutes after.
Yeah, it was like within that very close time frame. And I was like, my door buzzer always scares the heck out of me anyway. So I was like, oh, what was that? But I was like in such a like almost euphoric like daze that it didn't really, I was like, oh, whatever, it's just the door. It didn't shock me for once. So I got up, went across and answered the door, and it was my neighbors from below that I probably see them like 3 times a year. Like, you know, oh, hello, how you doing? Oh, you're right, kind of thing. And it's not like a big community feeling or whatever here, for whatever reason. Probably largely because I'm just a recluse and I just hide in my cave. And and she had this huge piece of chocolate and banana cake, and she was like, "Oh, just thought I'd bring you a bit of cake," you know. And her and her husband have always, you know, been just very polite and helpful when I've, you know, needed something, or you know, or you know, I'll need to bring their post in or something, whatever's going on, you know. And so just one of those just nice neighborly kind of feelings. And they were just there, like, and I think I sort of shocked her because she was looking at me like, "Oh, here you go," and I was like, "Oh, cakey!" And, like, I was in this euphoric state, so I almost lunged, like, not at her, but like at the cake, because I was like, I haven't had proper cakey for like, you know, that hasn't just been something I bought at a shop, or you know what I mean, like a package or something. And I don't eat cake in that very often, so I was like, "Oh, cakey!" Kind of practically like giant hands just rip your arm off with that cake kind of thing. And she was like, "Oh, careful that it hasn't got a plate underneath it and all that." And I was just like fumbling at this foil, and I was like, "It's fine, like that. Just give me the cake. Give me the cake now." and then I just looked at her, and I just remember, and I can like sort of picture my face, and like my eyes were just like slightly watery, and I was just like beaming with a huge smile because of the whole feeling of you know, good vibes and all that. And she must be like, that guy really likes chocolate and banana cake, because wow, we learned something about Grumbles today. So I was like, oh, thank you so much, I really appreciate it, you know. You know, thanks very much, see you soon, sort of thing. And that was it. But then I came back, and then I got to write in chat, oh, guess what? I just got a massive piece of chocolate. And the thing is, I wrote chocolate cake because I hadn't even seen the banana at that point.
Yeah.
So, and then I sort of took my first bit of it, and it was like, wait, there's a big thing of cream, then there's a chocolate sponge cake, and then there's a base to it, and in between there's some just perfect. You know, sometimes you have like fruit and it's just too cold, it's come out of a fridge or whatever, you know, and it just doesn't go with the rest of the cake too well from the texture and the temperature point of view. And this was just, they'd obviously just had this fresh this afternoon or something, and it was just like, here you go, here's a perfectly fresh, we've just sliced this piece of cake, it's at room temperature, and it was just delicious. And so I went through the whole like, oh, chocolate cake, I went like from cakey, so I went from like, here's some good vibes for Tiger and the cause, to there's the door, there's the neighbor, let's rip her arm off and take this cakey, and then let's get back. And then I went through the 2 stages of discovering it wasn't just chocolate cake, but chocolate and banana cake.
Which was just when I was talking about having to put on the banana costume.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I was thinking
perfect.
of bananas.
It was perfect.
yeah. So I just call it karma cake, because people in chat straight away were like, wow, that's some good karma.
That is indeed good karma. So yeah.
It made me happy.
And the end of this episode might make some people happy. This has been recorded on the 26th of March, 2024. It is currently 15:18 Central European Time. And without further ado, we're just going to remind people to be as kind to themselves as you are to others. Because if you do not take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And it's going to be goodbye from me, and a goodbye from Grumbles.
Bye.
Bye.